Well, we are back, huh? We're back at the 9 Club, everybody. Today, we have a very special guest. Mr. Kelly Bird is with us. How are you, dude?
Yeah, good to be here.
Man,
Yes.
it's been a while, dude. I haven't seen you in years.
I know, it has been a minute.
Moved up to Portland, and you disappeared from the SoCal lifestyle.
I did.
You know?
I miss it.
Yeah.
I have to ask you, do you have like a standard special protocol, like, or do you it just comes out like whatever you're feeling in the moment, or you're like, okay, this guy, I got to give him at least 3.
Yeah, well, 3.
Five
No.
I can get to 5, but it has to really be like.
I used to be all over the place, and now I have to do 3.
Okay.
Because I can't do 2 and then 5 and then 2. You know what I mean? Like, and anyway, listen, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
I've always wondered from a brand standpoint if you're like, okay.
I fully branded it out of my head. I'm like, yeah. But you got that. You got the brand manager hat on. I mean, ever since. Working for DC and Lakai and now Nike, but even skating before that. Yeah. Did you ever, when you were skating, back in the day, we're talking early 90s, did you ever think that you would be in the position that you are now?
No, totally organic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all, and we'll talk about it over the course of this thing, but like, it's just opportunity and being willing to like, kind of jump through the window when opportunity opened and like apply myself. And honestly, being, at the inception of all these companies that had exponential growth in these pretty iconic moments in skateboarding, and just learning all these things by virtue of just being there, in the necessity of like, okay, we're growing at such a rapid clip.
Right.
We got to figure this out now. Oh, the internet's here. Okay, we got to figure this out now. And like, it's me. I mean, it's really just like a lot of it is right place, right time, but also willingness to like apply myself when that opportunity did present itself. Yeah,
and also the people that you're around at those companies too, right?
So
you're just trying to like navigate
100%.
the terrain at the press.
All the personality.
I mean, in hindsight, like my story is like parlaying a 5-year skate career into a 25-year like footwear career by virtue of being like, with some of the most like iconic brand founders like in our space, and then like obviously like transitioning out of the space with where I am now. But like,
for sure,
I definitely, I mean, I was just fortunate to be around some like very forward-thinking people. For sure, and forward-thinking companies. I mean, not like DC at the time is no joke. Lakai coming in hot, like
definitely.
Mike Carroll, Rick Howard, and then moving over to Nike at this at this day and age. But real quick, this will take like 5 minutes. So the skate career. Let's,
we can bang this out real fast. But again, that's the beauty of my story. That's the beauty of my story. 100%. That's why it's like you can be here for this long and not have done it all just like through video parts.
For sure.
No doubt.
For sure. Because especially back then too, I mean, we talked about it before the show. We've talked about it on the show too, is like back then it's like you're hitting 20 and you're already going out the door. You're like thinking about what am I going to do now? And now it's changed.
I remember feeling like I had to keep it so low. Like, I mean, luckily I've had the gift of like youth. I've always looked a lot younger than I am. But I remember thinking at certain points, like, man, if they find out how old I am, is this going to happen? You know what I mean? Because at that point it was like, dude, if you were like over 16, people were like, well, why are we going to mess with this dude? Like, by the time you're 21, it's a wrap.
For sure. For sure.
So, I remember like, just in the process of like going from new school to real, I was like so concerned, like, are they going to think I'm too old?
How old were you at that point?
I was probably just turned 21 probably.
How crazy is that?
What's wild,
to switch over from a company at 21, but thinking like
I was just deadly afraid that like that was going to be a deal breaker.
Right.
Yeah.
But you the old school way of thinking though, dude. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, 22, like you're just barely starting.
Seriously.
You know what I mean?
In any endeavor, you're just getting started. But that was just like the mindset that had built up to that point, where it was like you get in the door at 15, 16, you have this run up until you hit 20 or 21, and then it's like, all right, on to the next batch.
Think about it.
And everybody had that mindset, and I think like that fostered a lot of like just as it evolved, people were just like, I gotta get what I have to get right now,
right?
Because the door's gonna shut.
Made everybody a little more hungrier.
And that certainly helped foster the mindset that led to a lot of the decision making that I'm sure in hindsight people would be like, well, shit, if I had felt like I could do this till 30, I would have thought of things a lot differently.
Totally.
In that moment. Yeah.
Imagine this day and age having that same mindset. Like Nyjah wouldn't even exist right now. Yeah. Like he would have been retired already.
Yeah.
22.
With that Worth way of thinking. Really.
Yeah.
But you know what's changed is a lot of the guys that started companies in the early 90s are here now, and they're still skating, and that's what's helped, I think, evolve, because a lot of those guys, like your Bakers and they're still skating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and even Rick
at a
Howard
high
and
level.
At a high level.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I was going to say the Lakai thing, because they started Lakai when they were pretty young as well.
Yeah.
Like, how old
Like
were they?
mid-20s?
I mean, Lakai started in 99.
99.
Into 99, beginning of 2000. So I mean, they would have
20s.
been in their mid-20s.
Mid-20s, starting an iconic shoe brand like that. That's crazy.
Definitely.
I mean, but they had done so. I mean,
Yeah,
they were in
yeah.
that realm
For
of
sure.
people that had done a lot by the time they were 16.
100.
Yeah.
I mean, just
No
to
doubt.
form Girl
Yeah.
at, that was 93?
They were 17 and 18.
17, 18 years old.
19 years old, yeah.
Yeah,
It's wild.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, just thinking like that, I'm like, wow.
But nowadays it's normal though. Nowadays
sure.
somebody forms a company at 20, 21, it's like it's normal,
normal.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at Tyshawn.
Yeah.
But starting a shoe brand, that's a whole different deal.
Totally.
That's
You know,
so
the thing
gnarly.
is, like, there's starting a company, and then there's like maintaining a company.
Oh,
and then there's like
100%.
going through the ebbs and flows of a company, and I think that's where like you get
Right.
in a little bit of a,
For sure.
you can get in a little bit of a weird pinch if you don't have like a little bit more experience.
And I think the girl having Megan there,
Yeah.
because she was running World at the time
Big
too.
time.
I
She's
think
the
that
grounding. She's the grounding factor over
definitely an
there.
integral
That's for
part of
sure.
it.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So when you were young, because you grew up in Houston,
I grew up in Houston.
how did you even like pick up a board in Houston? Was there like a big skate park near you?
No, not near me.
Friends? You got
I mean,
a Christmas
it was like,
complete for
where I grew up was textbook Friday Night Lights. You know what
Okay.
I mean? It was all football. It was like, Friday morning, everyone was in the gym for the pep rally. Like it was like the whole, it was
you
like,
were a part
it was
of that?
definitely, hell no.
Oh.
I was like totally on the outside. So the summer before I went in my freshman year in high school, classic story, kid comes back from California with the board. We lived in this like an apartment complex, so like we'd all like skate around the apartments with the board. There was a football. I lived across the street from a football stadium.
Okay.
And there were these like hills, like small hills, and so it was just like you go mess around on that, and then it was just kind of like at that point everybody was on the BMX thing, the skate thing was coming in. It was just like, oh, okay, it just clicked. Because you could do it on your own, and you could wormhole it, and that whole like OCD repetition thing where you're just like, oh, I just try and try and try, and like for us that gravitate towards it, like I think there's a common thread there where like we need something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, cool, this is for me.
So you never got into the football thing? You did?
No, I tried out. I remember like. I was young. I was small for my age.
Okay.
I didn't grow till honestly, I didn't grow till like after I left high school.
Oh, wow.
Late bloomer for sure. So like, I did I went through the motions of trying to play football, and I remember I just showed up, and like they were just grown men. You know what I mean? Like I was like 15 years old, and they were like grown men already. I was just like, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah.
So I remember coming home and just like the sheer disappointment. It was just like me and my mom and my sister, but I was like, yeah, it's not gonna happen. And she was just like, whatever, obviously, like it wasn't that big of a
The
deal.
family's
but like,
devastated.
Yeah. So yeah, I got the skate bug, and then a shop opened really close to me within that time frame called California Dreamin', and that was also like a big, like an integral part of like keeping me in it.
Okay.
For the obvious reason that it just like the community component, all the videos came through there, all the
So it was like a core skate shop.
Oh yeah. I mean, they had surf stuff. Like it was a surf skate shop. Because
In Houston, Texas?
Yeah, because it's close to the Gulf Coast, and so there is some surf on the Gulf Coast.
Okay. You don't really hear about it though.
Yeah, you don't really. It's not great. It's definitely not the great. It's definitely not the
a
greatest surf in the
destination
world.
location.
Right.
But yeah, you can surf there.
Okay.
And so yeah, it was like a hybrid surf skate shop, and so like yeah, we'd hang out there, watch all the videos, and then go skate out front, annoy all the other patrons, that whole deal.
Sure.
So yeah, then get a little older. The skate park at Houston was there. It was just a vert ramp at that time.
Did you start skating vert?
No, I never like. I know so much about vert just by virtue of being there. I've like, on the low, always been like, you know, like the biggest fit. Like I love vert.
Vert's amazing.
Yeah.
You never dropped in or anything?
I mean, I skated.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
I dropped in and like, but I was never. I mean, the guys that were skating there, it was just like, yeah, I wasn't getting in. I wasn't gonna get in that mix and like,
sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so the skate park was there. This is probably like, so, you know, go through high school. I'm the odd man out in high school. There's probably like 3 other people that skate, but like, whatever. You figure out how to navigate it. So did that. You know, had some people in the neighborhood because it was kind of like it was having a moment. So it was like you had some buddies that did it, but like you knew when like school finished and it was time to go to university, like they were gonna move on. But whatever, we had our little thing. It was like long tramp era, wall ride era.
Gotcha,
so like we just skate, you know, whatever, skate around, do the long tramp and the wall ride thing.
This is someone you could relate to this, and maybe I don't know. Your name's Kelly. Like, did people give you shit when you're
fucking insane, especially in Texas in that era. You know, skating certainly wasn't the thing.
Yeah.
I'm smaller, like whatever. It was just like all the pieces were there to just be, you know, kind of messed with constantly. And I looked pretty, like I was youngish, you know what I mean? So like, and I had long hair, so like you add all those things together, and I got like pretty whatever. I got pretty messed with. It was fine though, because I always kind of had this like sarcastic sense of humor where I could like mess with people back.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And so like I could, you know, like I'd take it a little bit and then give it back to them, and then they would just finally be like, oh, all right. so yeah, I like figured out that humor was going to be like my
forte.
Yeah. That's a strong attribute, bro. Really.
For sure. So you're skating now, the Houston skate park of Houston.
So yeah, like I think towards the end of high school. So I was living with my grandmother at the time. So what happened was my mom moved out of the school district that I had started high school in, and like, you know, it was just my grandma was like, whatever, I'll move there so you can finish high school here. So in that time, I kind of started doing this thing. And so like I don't know, I have to believe she knew in hindsight, but I was on the southwest part of Houston. The skate park was on like the northeast part of Houston, and it's like LA. It's a big city. So I would at least 2 or 3 days a week like take her car and drive to the skate park.
No license?
No, I had a license, but I would be like, hey, I'm just going to go to the shop or like skate around, like go meet this guy in this neighborhood, skate around. And like round trip, it was like, I don't know, 50-ish miles.
She ever checking the mileage?
She had to have been. Because the gas too, like I wasn't putting gas in it.
You drop it, you come back empty.
Yeah. So I did that a lot. Like I was doing the back and forth to the skate park. And I think by this time, like they'd start to build some mini, like, you know, they were putting mini ramps there. They had this little like janky street section. They eventually like put like a legitimate street section. So I did that back in, and then downtown Houston was like one of the best like street like skate like undercover, like people would come through there. And I mean, if you look at old Trans Worlds, like there's a lot of like photos of like buildings in downtown Houston because like when people would come for those shut up and skate contests or on tours, they'd all hit downtown and like, it was like a little natural skate park. So we had that. So we'd bounce back and forth between like the skate park and downtown. And then, I actually ended up eventually like living at the skate park for like a summer.
What do you mean? Like under a ramp?
Like they had, the dude that owned it, this guy, Dennis, he built like a house on where the park was.
Okay.
So he could kind of like maintenance everything and live there. So he had these rooms in the upstairs. And it was like literally like a box. Like he just basically built these boxes. I don't even think they were like 8 by 10. He could like but like, for like a couple summers, he like let us live in there for like, I don't know, maybe we'd have to like do some park maintenance or pay a little bit of money.
Okay.
Or like work at like he had a pro shop there. So like maybe work at the pro shop for a little bit. And so I did that for like, I think it was the summer before I like kind of embarked on my journey out here, because when I finished high school, I went to university for 2 years.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, in a city called San Marcos, outside of out of Austin.
So you graduated high school?
I graduated high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I did all that, and then it was like, okay, I'm doing the university, because I mean that's also like pretty ingrained in what you do out there. It's just like, okay, you know, go to high school, the football thing, you go to university, you get the job. Like,
it's kind of like a path.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do the university thing. I did 2 years, and I got to the end of my sophomore year, and my mom and my dad were splitting the tuition, and my mom was like, hey, you're going to have to get a job this year, because like, you know, you need to help start paying the tuition. And right around that time, like, this kid Jamar Parrish, who was from Arizona, his mom lived in Houston, and he would come spend the summers in Houston from Arizona. He was friends with Tim and
Gavin.
Mikey Taylor, Mikey Taylor, Schnurr. And so he would come, and like, so I would hear the stories about all those guys, right?
Okay.
And so like, he's actually the one, he got me kind of my first like board sponsor.
Oh, wow.
Which was Circle A at the time, which
Gotcha.
turned into Poorhouse. And so he'd come out and spend the summers. So I was getting some boards, you know what I mean? I think from probably like the end of my senior year in high school, like into like, for sure, like those first 2 years of university, I think I was getting like some flow from like Circle A.
Circle A, is this like 90 or is this 89?
This was probably 90.
90, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, probably 90.
Yeah,
89,
okay.
90.
Gotcha. Because I was just trying to think of like where Gavin was and Schnurr was at that time too.
They
like
were,
Gavin wasn't on. There was no
H Street was gone. H Street was happening.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure H Street was happening, because I remember, that was like the whole Hensley era. Like that was like Shackle Me Not. I think was like 89. I think.
Gotcha.
Because you know that was the whole like the chain wallet, the the army cargos. So it was like it was like 89, 90.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
he would tell you stories about Gavin.
So I just would hear, and that's what it was. Like you would just, it was like you'd travel around to different.
Grapevine.
I mean, that's what was rad about it then. It's like it was so small that like when you'd go to the place, you knew everybody, and like somebody would go from some place to this place, tell you everything that was happening. It was like a game of telephone, right? Like that's how you found out what was going on. And then like then the odd video would come out and you'd understand, like it all happened, like hit you so quick. So after my freshman year, like I said, it was like, okay, you're gonna work, you're gonna pay tuition. I was like, you know what, I have a little bit of traction with this thing. Like I'm gonna go, like, I knew Jamar, I knew, like, so I think I went to Arizona for a minute and like met those guys.
Okay.
And like hung out, and then from there I was like, I'm gonna try, like I'm gonna give this a shot. And then it just kind of like started from there. It was like, I think I told you at the beginning, like from 90 to 95, which was basically my entire trajectory on a skateboard. Like I bounced around a lot. I went to a lot of different cities. I had like a lot of different like, I don't know, moments with companies, but like, yeah, it really started there. Like that was really the start of it. And not like, I don't know, maybe like, obviously like being at the skate park in Houston, like, and having that spot, like that's where I started like I was like, okay, like I feel like I'm getting to a place where like I could go out there and like try to make it happen.
Yeah. And then actually going to Arizona and seeing these guys who were actually doing it gave you probably like some insight on like
another super definitive moment, and funny, just like how life will come full circle. But like Rick and the Blockhead team came out there. And,
to Houston.
And they, I don't even know if it was like a demo. Like they may have just like been driving through and stopped at the skate park, and now like. I was like saw him for the first time, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is like, this is what it should look like. And so, I remember that being like a real, like, I don't know, like kind of light bulb moment for me, where I was like, oh, okay, like, like street, like this is what street should look like.
Totally,
especially from a tall dude's perspective.
Yeah.
Total full circle.
I went to San Diego. So I'm trying, like okay, so I'm on Circle A. I had been dealing with I had met Bob Schmelter, obviously, who was like the founder of Circle A. There was a transition from like Circle A to Poorhouse, and I remember like at a point I'm living in an apartment with Bob Schmelter in Dana Point off Golden Lantern, and I had a job at a Ralph's, which is insane.
Bagging?
Walked out of the job after like 6 weeks. The manager was like, wouldn't leave me alone for chewing gum. So I was like, all right. So by virtue of that, I met Adam and Ronnie. So Adam McNatt and Ronnie were there. And so started skating with them a bit. And I was like, whatever. you know, again, you just continue to meet people. You're going to the places that you see. Like I remember going to Calvary Chapel for the first time and feeling like because Calvary Chapel was in like the H-Shoot videos. It was like one of those skate spots, like those Vista spots where they were all at. I remember going to Calvary Chapel the first time and feeling like I was like at the Eiffel Tower. It's like a parking lot of a church. You know what I mean? Being like, this is the best place. This is literally the best place in the world. It's like a manual pad.
Right.
You know what I mean? And some like obstacles. And I was like, this is it.
But to you, it's a
like,
holy grail.
Like I'm here.
Tourism.
This is it. Like it's all happening. I'm at
it.
Calvary Chapel in Vista. Like it's all happening.
So
With Adam McNatt and Ronnie Martino.
that was a moment, bro.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. So
what year did 101? Were they on 101 at this?
No. So this was when Alva was they were part of, it was like Alva New Blood, I think they maybe called it.
Wow.
It was, there was an ad with TA, Ronnie, Adam, and Pat Brennan. So that was the era that I was kind of there. I was like, cool, like these guys are all doing it. And I was in San Clemente, like Dana Point, San Clemente. So I was like skating with those guys. And at some point, I don't really remember like what the ignition point was, but it was like, okay, Adam and Ronnie are doing this thing, like the warehouse is here. I'm gonna like start like going this direct, and they were starting to get like that Alva New Blood thing going, which eventually became New School.
Okay.
I ended up even like staying at Ronnie's house for a little bit, so I was like really hanging with like
you were in
Ronnie.
The mix, yeah.
And so I was like, well, these guys are doing this. And at that time is when Ronnie kind of started going up to SF. Like he'd go to SF for like a week, you know, a couple weeks. You may have even been like in the mix at that point, Dubs.
Yeah.
But like he'd go to SF and he'd come back with all these stories about what was going on in SF. You know what I mean? Henry, Mike, like
EMB,
everything that's going on at EMB. And then he'd come back and just do, I'll tell you right now, like I've seen a lot of skating in my time, and I've definitely seen a lot of like skateboarding get invented. And dude, that guy had something, and you know, because you saw it, but like that dude, like he'd just come back and do stuff where I was like, okay, like I'm watching skateboarding be invented like right in front of me right now.
For sure.
And he Adam too, like had that, but like, yeah, I mean, that was another one of those like kind of like moments in time where I was like, okay, this is insane. This is everything I dreamed like that, you know, that it could be. Like I'm here with these dudes watching this happen. And again, it just gives you like the energy and the spark to keep going. So they, you know, in short order ended up on PAL. Like Pat and Ronnie ended up on PAL. Sorry, Pat and Adam ended up on PAL. Ronnie ended up on Think. So that was right when the New Blood thing turned into New School, and I was like, well, I'm here. Like I've like established a relationship with these guys. They seem interested in like, you know, I was like in a couple ads. I think the first video I was in was like a video they put out. It's called No Pools in this one, which was supposed to be a stab at, not a stab even. It was just like, hey, we've evolved from this Alva thing, like that. There's no pool. So that was like my first video part. And then another video came out in pretty short order after that called -1, and that was, I actually skated to the De La Soul roller skating song.
Yeah.
And so like I was starting to have some footage out there. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm getting these video parts.
This is the -1.
Yeah.
Oh, Raj.
So yeah, this is like skate. You know, I'm still this is all like heavy skate park at Houston footage mixed in with some like, I was bouncing back and forth between like Houston and San Clemente in this time. Right?
That's what I was going to ask you. Was it all?
So it was back and forth. Like I'd stay at Ronnie's. You know, I'd stay with like Ronnie for a bit, then I'd go back to Houston, like stay at my grandmother's for a bit. So that's why you see like this is like Mission Viejo, I think, right here.
Oh,
because Ronnie lived in Mission Viejo. So yeah, there was a lot of like, that's Vista. So like there's just a lot of bouncing around. This is the Houston part.
Okay.
So I was bouncing back and forth between those two places a lot. So they bounced, they were doing their thing. In one of the, so this is like another like definitive moment in time. In being back at the park in Houston, these guys from Toronto came down because they were like, it was like Bill Weiss, Thomas Morgan, Justin Bokma would come down there because they were all, you know, they were big vert heads. And so they'd come down to the park, and like for whatever reason, we just like got on really well. You know what I mean? So like I forged this relationship with them, and cut to like you know, again, not totally clear on what the moment was, but like it was right around the time where that big PAL contest happened at the warehouse, that big famous PAL contest at the warehouse where Mark did like the frontside pivot on the wall. It was like the Plan B, like Plan B was kind of just getting going. Those guys drove to Houston. They bought a car for like, and I remember like talking on the phone, like, let's go out there. We can stay at Falhees. Who lives in San Clemente. He was the guy, the new school guy. And I guess like I'm kind of jumping around a bit. I may have already like had a board at this point.
Seriously, for new school.
Yeah. Because I think right after that -1 video, like I had a board. It was like it was Fat Albert.
That
was my first board. Yeah, Fat Albert board. Yeah.
Crazy.
This we got it right here. This one.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
It's actually had like some board. You know, I had a handful of boards on new school. So
now, why are they? Were you ready to turn pro at this point, or were they just putting boards out?
I think it was just like, dude, this is happening. I don't like. It's everything I had dreamed about to that point, and like this company was like willing to do it for me.
Okay.
So, and you know, I was like, yeah, great. Like let's
do it.
Let's make it happen.
Okay.
And so
it was a worthy company, not to cut you off. I mean, at that time, it was like relevant, like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, they whatever, they had good riders. Like they did all the things, you know, that make you feel like you're in the pro, like you're in the pro realm. So Bill, Justin, Thomas, and this kid Simon drive to Houston, pick me up. We drive to San Clemente.
That's a gnarly drive.
Yeah, we
For
stay
them,
we stay at Falhees, and I'll never forget. He let us stay there, and he was like, I think it was like maybe me and one other person was allowed to sleep in the house. But
What?
like Bill and Justin had no. So the story, like we went out one night and like come back pretty late. I made it into the house. Like those guys, I think slept in the car, and maybe the car got cold. So he had this box van, this like Astro box van, and he had 2 kids at the time. His wife comes out with the kids to take him to school. Bill and Justin are passed out in the van, scared the shit out of his kids. The kids come running in the house crying. So he's like, you guys got to bounce. So we were like, all right, well, we're going to Santa Barbara anyway for this contest. So we get up there, and I for sure was like had that board out at the time, because I remember, again, just like this moment of like, holy shit. Sheffy had the shirt on. There was a long sleeve shirt with one of the characters on it. He was wearing the shirt, and I was like, this is fucking insane. Sean Sheffy has my shirt on right now. Like, remember it so clearly, like, holy, like, wow, this is nuts. Okay, so there's that. And then skating around in it, fully got mowed by Solomon, a guy.
In the
practice.
Okay.
It's like chaos, like fully mowed by Solomon, a guy.
Solomon guy's a big dude.
Yes, he is.
Picks me up. It's like super cool. Dusts me off. Total moment of serendipity. He's like, whatever. It was just like quick. Dusted me off. Like, rad. Thanks. On your way. So that was like sort of this like foreshadowing moment for like my road to getting on Real. After that contest, I ended up in Toronto. I don't know, like, I don't know if I drove from the contest to Toronto or if I went back to San Clemente and then Texas, but there was a park in Toronto called Rudy's that had just been built, and those guys would talk about it, like, you got to come skate this park. It's amazing.
Bill
it's amazing.
Weiss
Yeah,
and
it's like this
everybody.
giant, and it was enormous, and indoor and heated, and like, yeah, it was perfect. And I had been to Toronto once, and it just like there was some intrigue about it to me. I don't know why. It was just like, this place, it's like there's something so cool about it. So I went up there and stayed with them. I lived in Toronto for about 1.5 years.
Wow.
And that's more like we'd skate Rudy's and like, you know, we'd street skate in between skating at Rudy's. And so in that time, I had like filmed a bunch of stuff at Rudy's. And I was still on new school. You know, I had a couple boards. And then Solomon ended up doing a demo at this park. And we sort of and I can't remember if we were staying in touch or if we had like exchanged numbers to that point, but he came to the park and I was like, hey, like, what's going on? We skated. And I think I gave him whatever footage I had, and he's like, cool, you know, whatever, like, I'm gonna go back and like, we'll stay in touch.
Okay.
And so not long after that, he was like, hey, like, you know, you want to come stay with me and we'll see what happens. So I was like, of course. So I remember being like, so diplomatic about it, which at that point in time was also like pretty unheard of. I was like, I gotta quit New School. Like, nothing was even happening at that point, but I was like, I gotta, like, just for my own personal, like, whatever, to feel like I was like
ahead of it.
So yeah, so I was like, okay, I gotta call Falhy and just tell him what's up. So I did it, and whatever, it was fine. I mean, whatever. He was obviously just like not stoked, but he was like, okay, cool, whatever. So I went and stayed with Solomon, and this was probably into 92, maybe middle or into 92.
Okay.
Went and stayed with him in San Jose, Los Gatos. Skated around a bit there, and then, you know, then it was like, all right, we're going to SF, like we're going to Deluxe. Did that. That was all cool. Met like, you know, whatever, Clint, Fausto, Swenson.
Yeah.
And whatever, it seemed cool, but it was still like there was still this like quote unquote like trial phase that was happening, you know, and that was like, you know, that was like a big part of it, and it still is in some capacity. For sure. But it was really like you had to really like be vetted, you know what I mean?
Yeah. See if the dudes get down with you.
Right.
100%. 100%. So, you know, that all was cool. Like you know, everybody kind of clicked. And then I went to EMB, and that was like, you know, the first time at EMB, just pulling up, you're just like, okay, this is nuts.
Another holy
yeah. And you know, at that point, it had already been, you knew what was happening there, and you knew like who the players were.
Right.
So I was like, well, this is insane. Again, just like this is nuts. Like I'm here.
You might get jacked by Kelch.
Yeah. So that's so funny. I ended up staying at Jeff Clint's house, and like, within a week of being there, I hurt my ankle pretty bad. So I was just like at Jeff's, just like kind of trying to like work my way through it. And you know, at that point, you don't know anything about rehab, so just like sitting in a house, like kind of by myself. And for whatever reason, like I was probably having some beers, because at that point, like I was old enough to have some beers, and that also was like pretty advanced, I think, for like that. Like nobody was like having some beers. At that point, right? Like everybody was still like real in just like skate.
Drinking Kool-Aid.
And so I remember like James calling me, and or not calling me. He called the house, and I picked up, and we hadn't really interacted too much. And he was looking for Jeff, and so we ended up talking. And I kind of just told him like, oh, you know, whatever, I'm having beers, like blah blah. And I think like he was just like, wow, somebody who's like down to do something besides just so we clicked.
Okay.
And to me, that was the moment where like it all kind of like started to happen from there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like, I mean, as much as Solomon was like the you know, the spark for it all to like really like get me out there and help me, you know, foster.
Solomon's a recruiter, bro.
Foster the opportunity, because he did the same thing for you.
Definitely.
To foster the opportunity, I really feel like it all kind of clicked when I had that moment with James. You know what I mean? Because right away in short order, it all kind of started to happen.
Okay.
And so I was like, cool, like I guess I didn't really put it into perspective at the time, like who James was and what he meant to like all those guys. But I was just, you know, it was all natural. Like that's just who I was. I was like, yeah, man, just fuck, whatever. And he was like, okay, cool. Like, and then, you know, it just kind of went from there. And
Rad.
Yeah, maybe, had too many beers. But you know, it's all relative.
So it quickly sped up from there. Because we're talking like,
well, sped up to the point of like then the next thing was like
of getting on reel.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, the footage I had certainly helped. Everybody understood like, okay, there's like some potential here.
Right.
And then I clicked with everybody. Then it was like, okay, well, we're gonna make a video. We're gonna get on the road. And so we did this tour. That was probably, I don't know, 6 weeks, if not 2 months. And it was Dave Meddy, who was the TM. Me, Solomon, Tony, Ferguson, this guy Matt Sherman. There might have been like a Mandoli and a Ed DeVera in the mix every now and again. And we literally toured from San Francisco all the way, like we went all the way to the East Coast. And the stipulation with the tour was give the guys gas money to get to the next place. Give them a place to stay, and buy them one meal. Like, that was it. That was how you got from point A to point B.
You're talking about, like, the skate shop doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You went to the skate shop. You did the demo. Total Chuck skate
Who's collecting all that? Who's the collector?
Meddy.
Responsible
Meddy
one.
was the responsible one. So somehow, I mean, I don't even know if he had a credit card at the time. You know, if we said, none of us certainly did. And somehow we managed to cobble together like a 6-8 week tour with that as the modus operandi for it. You know what I mean?
And nobody's paying you at this point to do this.
I mean, we're getting, you know, we have boards out at that point, and you're getting like whatever.
But you just quit your company. You just quit.
Yeah, I think that like my first board was like the underwater slick. The guy Ansel, like Kevin Ansel, who did a lot of the deluxe slick stuff.
Oh, so at this point you're on.
Like at that point, I'm on for sure.
Okay.
Maybe my board didn't come out until the Real video came out.
After that point,
yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I know I didn't have a lot of money. Put it that way. So we make it to the East Coast. That whole trip was to film for this video.
Got you.
So that's what like the impetus of the tour was. So we come back, and the video comes out. Look at it. I think 92 or 93 that video came
93.
out. The video comes out in 93.
Yeah, the Real video.
Yeah.
By the way, here's the ad real quick.
Yeah. So that's my first
underwater
board. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What
are you doing in that screen grab?
Yeah.
What is this?
Backside 180 nose grind.
Back 180 nose grind.
Yeah.
Down a little hubba.
Yeah, that was in San
Little
Jose.
2-3
Oh, is that
hubba.
revered out too?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
so sick.
Okay.
So the video comes out, and then it's like, okay, like get the board, and so that all starts happening. And then I stayed in SF I'd stay at Jeff Clint's for a while, and then I'd go to Toronto for a minute, and then I actually ended up in Vancouver for a minute.
Jeez,
living
you were
with
all over the place, man.
I seriously
That's
was.
awesome.
Like honestly, like that was to me. I was like, take advantage of the opportunity to see the world. Like to me, that was what skating was like, you've been in this one place forever. The door is open for you to see the world, like, and use this as a way to see the world. So like, I was about like trying to take advantage of every opportunity to do that. Whereas like at that time also, like people were like, dude, you're sending me to Europe? No, I don't want to do that. No, that is highly inconvenient. You know what I mean? And then get out there and be so mad about it.
Yeah,
highly inconvenient.
Yeah, and so I was always just like, oh, you know, met Colin and Moses and like that whole crew, and was like, they were like, yeah, Vancouver. I was like, I love Canada. It's great. I'll go up there. So I would, you know, I was like bouncing around doing.
It's amazing
doing that stuff. So the Real era was amazing. It was quick. It was basically San Francisco, a little bit of Vancouver, San Diego for a while.
There's Santa Monica right there.
Yeah. Down to Santa Monica.
San Diego for
I think
for
you touched
while.
on that manual, by the way.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. This is Roger's spot right here. So, I mean, yeah, it was. You know, when I was like kind of going through the timeline of all this, I was like, look, it was not the most highly lucrative era of skate, but it was the most culturally rich, one of the most culturally rich eras of skate. 1000%. And to me, that was another thing that like just the value of that to help for me to like be where I am now. Like at that, you cannot like undervalue that experience of like living in that moment. You know what I mean? And to me, like, more than anything, like, sure, it would have been nice to have a little bit more output than I did, but like, I can still say I lived it. You know what I mean?
What's rad to this day though is like those two boards, like the Fat Albert board and this board right here. I mean, they're iconic graphics. Like this one is that Real board,
and that was like so. The first couple graphics where Ansel was like really driving it, and you know, it was like a time where you'd look at like, let's go. Okay, we need graphics. Gotta go to the art store, get a book, like thumb through the book. Love that. Ansel would just like recreate it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was like the first couple graphics, and then it was like, okay, I want to try to like do something that's. And so I just like leaned into the bird thing with Judas Priest, and I wasn't even like a big Judas Priest guy, but like I was like, that thing looks so cool as a bird, and so that's what it was. And then from that point, the whole theme for me, then you see like most of my graphics from that point are like bird related.
Okay. How did you like? We're talking what 92 to 95 on Real.
Yeah. What
made you come to that point where you're just like you started to get out of that and into more industry side? Because Again, we talked about like it being, you know, the age aspect, but
so I was bouncing around a lot. I obviously was like making a lot of friends with people like as I was bouncing around, and then I ended up in San Diego for a little bit, and you know, it gets talked about, I think, pretty regularly, but that alien house. So it was like me, Rob, me, Rob, John, and Dwayne, and another house where a lot of fun was had. And
couple beers,
and it became this sort of like epicenter for you know, for like a lot of the skaters kind of came through there, but also whatever, people would just come stay with us, and because that's when the ASR stuff was happening too. So like people would come and like hang out during ASR. Like I mean, Kelch would come down there and stay with us sometimes. So like Pacific Drive was there. I probably spent at least 6 months of my life like top to bottom at Pacific Drive. And so, you know, whatever, by virtue of that, like befriended a lot of people and became friendly with like Ken and Damon, who were doing 8 Ball at the time, which became Drawers, and then DC and Dub. So
Dub. I forgot about Dub.
So which was way far ahead of its time.
Yeah, for sure.
So when the door starts, you know, it was that moment where like, okay, I the output, I don't know, I just felt like I was aging out, and so.
Was it your skating aging out though?
Also too, I just want to be like real. You know, I enjoyed the time there, and I took full advantage of enjoying the time that like that experience provided me. I didn't take full advantage of like applying myself skate wise. So like, make no mistake about that. Like, I was having a lot more fun than I was doing a lot of skating. So whatever, it just gets to a point where like there's all these other these people that are like in the pipeline. So it's like, all right, like time to start like making space for that. And so you know, you have the talk. It's like me, Jim, and Jeff, and maybe Tommy too. And they're like, all right, you know, what do you want to do? I was like, you know, I don't need to do the whole dog and pony retirement thing. And I actually started writing for Slap for a minute, because in my mind that was the thing, and that was always what was endearing about Deluxe. It was like, they help you after you skate. They help you. You can like evolve into these other things through like High Speed or Ermico or even Deluxe. So it's like, it didn't feel disposable in a sense. It was like, oh, see you later. So it was like, okay, you know, I had written a little bit of stuff. So I was like, I mean, I'm not a great writer in any stretch, but I was like willing to like, again, apply myself and try. So I was like writing a little bit of stuff for Slap, and that was cool. So I guess to rewind, at the very end, I was in San Diego at that alien house. I moved back up to SF for probably about a year. And maybe part of that was like, I got to really lock in and try to like make this thing happen. And I did like my real video trajectory was the Real Video, nonfiction, and Ride On. So like those things, I can't like tell you exactly like when stuff came out. But towards the end, like I was probably trying to do stuff for like one of those videos, and then it was just like, I got like time to keep it moving. So I was doing some writing, and in the time at San Diego, like I had stayed in touch with Ken and Damon, because that's when Drawers was happening. I'd had the Drawers out at that point, which it was like obviously a big deal. And then they were just starting DC Shoes, and so the original team was Danny, Colin, Rudy, Rob, and they were giving shoes to Scott and Keith, who were in SF. And I was getting DC shoes up there too. So we were all kind of riding DCs. It was like whatever, this new thing. Everybody was like, "Oh, what's going on? You know, what's happening?" And then it got to a point where Ken just kind of reached out and was like, "Hey, we're starting to, you know, the Drawers was doing its thing. DC felt like it was like gonna start to get some momentum, and he was like, would you be interested in coming down here and like helping out with the team stuff?" And I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
And you're already transitioning a little bit out of skating and into.
I knew. I was like, okay, so, and it was like one of those things, like I said, like a door open, and I was like, you know what, I should do this, because like I can see. I can see what they're doing is like way different. It feels like it's,
there's something.
It feels like there's something there.
Yeah. And you have to move back down to
I was already down there, and had a bunch of relationships with people down there. So yeah, that was my foray into the footwear space.
Got you.
So the passion of riding, skating anymore had already kind of just died out in a sense.
You know, yeah.
Not that you never wanted to skate, but you know what I mean.
Being a pro skater.
Being a pro skater.
I also too was like under no illusion that like I was anywhere near in the realm of like what was happening at that. Like I'm around all these people and like I had great relationships with all these people, but I'm also watching what they're doing in real time and just being like, I'm not anywhere near, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna be able to like maintain. Like I'm just not applying myself like that. Like I it's not to say that if I hadn't really tried to apply myself that like maybe I couldn't have like.
But even being in this SF and EMB and like seeing Henry just being so inventive with the tricks, like that didn't.
I mean, yeah, of course, it's
infectious.
It'll help the juices flow for sure.
Right.
But then there's only so much time that
there's only so much the juices can flow.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Okay.
So when you went to DC, did you start formulating the team then from there?
The team was already, the first iteration of the team was pretty much in place through like, I mean, it was Danny and Colin, I think, driving a lot of it. Ken too. And then I think my part of it didn't come until I was there for, I don't know, a year, maybe a little bit more.
In that year, were you just doing like little things to help out just wherever you could?
No, I was there like in a team manager capacity. Like that's what I went there to do. It was like, okay, I'm going to TM it.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where it started. It was just like get people boxes when they need it. And I'll also never forget just like that initial outreach of like calling people like Danny and Colin and being like, okay, I'm here now. Like I'm gonna be sending you some boxes, and just like that whole interaction just is so surreal.
I'm sure.
Because also at that time, like what is now referred to as sports marketing, I don't know. It had a little bit of a different like vibe to it. You know what I mean? Like you were a little bit of a, I don't know. Yeah, you were.
I love that sports marketing.
You were the guy to get the box.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
And so yeah, I mean that's how it started. And I mean honestly, that I touched on it, but like that experience and being at that place at that moment in time where like just things were happening so fast in the way they had said, like, okay, so it started in that kind of team manager space, and then it got to the point where it was like, hey man, would you want to try to like design, to like do some apparel design? And I was like, sure, like let's do it. And so Damon was like great at like helping try to like get me set up with like learn these tools, you know, learn these illustration tools. They had 2 pattern makers in house with this whole material room, so you could literally come up with like a 2D drawing, walk into this room, hand it to these 2 German ladies that were pattern makers. They'd make a pattern, they'd cut the pattern. You'd go pick the material out, and by like depending on the piece, within like a day or 2 days, they would show you a finished piece. Like how insane is that? Wow. Like in hindsight, how ridiculous is that to have access to that at that point in time, where it's like, here's my wild idea, and 2 ladies would hand it to you like within 24 to 48 hours. Like that's mind blowing.
Are we talking about like
especially at that time?
Like here's this shirt idea that I have. I bought the. What were the catalogs at the time?
CCS?
No, it was like
Victoria's Secret.
They were like sport apparel catalogs at Eastland. I want to say
East Bay.
Was it East Bay?
Yeah,
okay, East Bay.
Yeah, East Bay. So you know, you get the East Bay catalog and be like, oh, what shirt and what pant and what runner, and you do your like whatever version of that,
right?
And walk into the room. And obviously Damon was like doing stuff like way outside. Like he was actually like designing and like doing cool stuff. And so like here I am just trying to like wing together like you know, the stuff I thought was cool. And it was rad to have the experience, and it was like super cool of them to like, I mean, it even got to a point where it was like, do you want to try to do some footwear? Like when they were doing
Wait, did anything
stuff got there was definitely stuff that like made it into production.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, none of it is like, it's not mind blowing, but still like again to like have exposure to like what that process even is, like how invaluable that became down the line.
Big time.
Is like, I mean that is, I just wish there was like more of that opportunity now. Like again, everything evolves and moves forward, and I get that, but like that moment in time and like where skate brands were and like what you could do, like just to like learn the tools
Right.
was incredible. And so like, yeah, to be there at that point in time, do that.
That was another form of school. Like,
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
You know,
I say to myself, like, in a lot of ways, like these brands were almost our forms of higher learning. You know what I mean? Like our institutions for higher learning, right? Like the stuff we got from those experiences is the kind of the same tools and experiences you get from like quote unquote institutions.
Going to like FITM.
And
like,
in hindsight, how fortunate I was to be at some of the best quote unquote institutions of higher learning. I mean, even Deluxe, you know what I mean? Like, but like what I was able to glean from there. Then like Circus, which was DC Drawers and Dub, and then you know, later on to like Lakai as part of Podium, as part of Girl, and again, like just that moment in time where like there was just all these new brands and all these opportunities associated with the brands that if you just like kind of jumped in and applied yourself, like you could really like, you could take a lot away. So I dabbled in that space for a minute at DC and Drawers.
Did you design any footwear?
No, I never really clicked in the footwear space.
Gotcha,
And you know what? My thing was this, like, I and this is goes for a lot of skaters, even to this day. It's easy to look at something and say, I don't like this, change this. When it's just like do it from the ground up, it's a totally different game. It's a totally different game.
Sure.
And so I learned really quickly, like, okay, if it's just like, you know, you kind of catch the car and you're like, okay, you know, I caught it. Now what? And again, like it was super cool that they allowed me the opportunity to figure that out about myself, that like that wasn't my deal. But it was super, like I'm super grateful for it in hindsight.
That, like, learning process.
So then it became more about like, okay, it became more about like the team and like fostering and building the team. And, you know, obviously the super tours and that stuff start to happen, and then it really takes off from there. And
the
that
super
was,
tours
yeah.
were,
I mean, that was definitely one of, you know, like
incredible.
I have a lot of like fond memories, but like, yeah.
Did you get
again just being at places in time that have like stood the test of time and like I'm pretty fortunate to have been
for sure
a part of a lot of those.
Yeah, and I think back then, like the DC Euro Tour, like nobody. I mean, before it was happening, but now nobody's like dressing in like a uniform, so to speak, at like a crazy demo.
That was the first of its kind in that sense. I don't recall seeing
it was like all-star skaters,
unison type shit.
So again, full circle moment. When I get to DC, Ken hands me a book, and he's like, "You should read this book." And it was like a story about Nike, you know. And he had like gone through, highlighted a bunch of stuff, written a bunch of stuff at the margin. So he was essentially applying like the Nike playbook to skating way before Nike, you know, came around and did it.
Interesting.
I mean, so I think like he was smart. Like he saw like there was an opportunity in this space using this playbook, and he applied it. And I think the Super Tour was part of that. You know what I mean?
It was iconic.
Yeah.
It was iconic.
And people felt, you know, I remember it being weird in the moment, everybody kind of looking at each other like, really? You want us to all wear these jerseys? Like, all right. But then we would get into, I mean, I'll never forget that first demo. You know, it was like, Rob Dudek, fire in, do the trick. Rick Howard, fire in, do the trick. And it was like this, it was not scripted in any sense. It just kind of played out in a way where it just was like this perfect, like, everybody got their name called and dropped in and made the trick. And it was nuts. People were just like losing it. And then, at night, we'd always do something like really fun and then like get on a plane and like go to the next city. So like, it was definitely the first glimpse of like, hey, this thing, I mean, whatever, for me, I know it had happened at different parts of the 80s with like vert skating, with like some of those too. Like they had their rock star moments.
They had the rock star
Like
moments.
for me, this was the first glimpse of like, oh, this is like real, you know what I mean? Like
street
this
skating.
Is the potential. This is the potential of this thing, like kind of playing out in front of you.
This is the first one, I believe, right?
This is the first one was, I think this is in Amsterdam,
Because like the second one, I can't. I just remember it was 4 and 1.
They jumbled, they jumbled together.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
and the second one was like, you know, it's like any follow up. It was cool, but it had a little bit of a different energy. You know,
didn't have the same.
Yeah.
I love the shoes back then, man.
Yeah.
They look crazy, but they're awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, the sequel was cool, but it was like, it almost felt too prescriptive at that point. This one felt like people,
I mean, everybody was stoked to wear the same jerseys and stuff, right?
It was like I think at the end, people just bought into it and were like, "This is so fun,"
right?
You know? And I'm sure if you ask all of them, they hold it like in a pretty high, like
for sure.
It's high up in the memory banks,
for sure.
Somebody came in. They brought their jersey, didn't they?
Huff
brought his jersey when he came on the show.
That's super sick.
Yeah. So it's cool to be not only building DC, but to be around for this.
Yeah, I was a part of this, and also when Danny did the first mega ramp, like that, I was there for that too. Which again, just another like just crazy iconic moment in time, and that was Danny watching Hoffman. He's told this is he's told it 100 times. Watching what Hoffman was doing was like, I think I can do that. So Ken, again, being like, he had a good brand, like he was a good marketer for, like he had a good brand mind, and he's like, cool, like let's do it, and this will be, we can
piggyback off this
catapult DC forward through this moment. And obviously it became like its own sort of franchise within DC.
Sure.
But yeah, just like that was at the Palomar Airport, on Palomar Airport Road. That was like a landing strip there.
That's great.
And Transworld covered it, and it was that. But then Sturt kind of hid in the mountains and shot it.
So the story goes.
So it was like the Thrasher. It was also the Thrasher cover. But yeah, it was just like understanding like what it meant to orchestrate a big moment from a like marketing standpoint, and like I don't think I really even fully absorbed it at the time.
Okay,
but in hindsight, I'm like, oh, this is it's storytelling, right? Which in the grand scheme of things, that's what you're doing as a marketer, as a brand person, is like it's like you're telling stories. So
so crazy.
So yeah, I mean, those were probably the two biggest. Whatever,
the mega ramp and the DC Super Tour, right? But you were only with DC like a few years.
Yeah, I was
am I
only
correct?
there 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
So you did all of that in 3.5 years.
Yeah, and everything worked out the way it did, and I'm grateful for it. But like a little bit of an unceremonious like exit from DC. It was so glory. There was a lot of glory in it, and then there got to a point where people started to understand like the size of it and the scope of it. And this was at a time when there were no like the contracts were pretty loose, right? Like there was no there were no royalties and minimum guarantees and all that type of stuff. So if you had a shoe that hit, you did absolutely amazing.
Right.
If you had a shoe that didn't hit, you weren't really making much money. And so I think guys were like, well, it's cool. Like we love everything that we're doing, and we love, whatever. We love the product, et cetera, et cetera. But like you had guys that were like the founders of the company that had a lot of moments where they were like not really getting much. And so it kind of started to become a thing. And then there was actually even a moment where like, Eric was gonna like, there was this idea like, is Eric gonna get on? I remember like his contract coming through the fax machine.
Costin
through the
really?
Fax.
Yeah.
He was gonna get on DC.
It was like a conversation because what happened was Rick got his first shoe check for that Howard one. I think he showed it to Eric. Maybe.
Eric's like, send me a contract,
and they were like, he was like, okay. And so like maybe there was a little conversation like by virtue of that.
That shoe was great, by the way.
Yeah,
Rick Howard.
But I think what happened from that is that Eric got a S stepped up and was like, okay, we're gonna give you a contract. I think they gave him like a pretty like nice contract out of it. And so from there, I think people understood like, okay, you can have a contract with like a guarantee, like with a minimum guarantee.
Got you.
And so it became this dialogue, like, hey, we should have some guarantees, because they were like, hey, we're building equity into this thing, and even though you're not selling shoes with our name on them, you're selling all this product from a brand that we've built equity into the brand. And so by virtue of that, we should get some kind of minimum guarantee. And it was this contentious thing where like, I don't know. It was just, there was a moment where the team kind of came together. I think it was at Damon's house, and kind of like talked through what could this look like.
So let me get this right. At this point in time, like they're not even getting a solid paycheck. It's just royalty based.
Pretty sure it was like all royalty based.
And that was a big team back then too.
Yeah,
a lot of guys on there. Yeah.
Yep.
That's hard to believe. Fuck, man. That they.
And if there was a guarantee, it was like a couple grand a month. It wasn't crazy money.
Yeah.
But when somebody else beside you is probably getting like 40 grand for
way more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, like when it was like the that like golden era, when the shoes hit, it was way more than 40 grand. I can tell you.
Get like $120,000, $150,000 check.
Wow. Yeah. And so you see that kind of money, and everybody talks and they understand like, well, Rick's shoe hit.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, mine didn't. You know. You understand why these issues arise.
Totally.
For sure.
Wow. This is so interesting to hear from a different perspective now. I was like a little kid watching.
Yeah.
Hearing like, this is amazing.
So, so there's this moment at Damon's, and I think like the idea gets floated. Can we get something that's like in the realm of what Eric got? And I think they walked away and weren't on the same page with it. And that to me was the spark for Lakai.
Right.
Because I think
Makes sense.
I think Tim probably was he obviously was talking to Rick and Mike a lot, and I think he had maybe even floated it to them to some point, like, hey, if anything ever gets weird, hit me up. And I think coming out of that meeting, that might have been where it was like, okay, moment. Hit me up.
I could see that. I could see that.
And so in pretty short order, I could start to read the tea leaves that like something was up, because I'd like call Rick to get an ad. He'd be like
elusive.
Yeah, elusive. I got something happening. And then I mean, even so, to back up a little bit, there was a moment, kind of to your point about building the team, like there was a moment, it was around the time when like Listen and Fit Credo came out, and we were like, Stevie's like, Robbie was a thing. He was like definitely like a name. Stevie for sure was like making noise. Josh loved him, and Josh was already like a pretty, he was a part of DC, and he would always feel like they were talking about like Stevie in the workshop, and that was like always kind of like, I don't know, it just seemed like it never really got any traction. And so in that time, it was like, okay, a meeting with like me, Ken, and Damon, and it was like this formal presentation of like Robbie and Stevie need to be on the team. and they were like in the mix and getting shoes, and like I don't think anything happened right away. And then the stuff starts to happen with like Rick and Mike. And then they break the news that they're gonna move on. And my intent was to stay with DC. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, these guys gave me a chance. Like I'm loyal, I'm gonna ride this out. And then I think like I definitely had a chip on my shoulder, because I loved I just loved the dynamic of like what we had across the spectrum. And of course I loved like what Rick and Mike were doing with like Girl and Chocolate and all that stuff. So I like it was hard for me to like see that part of it like
I could
start
see
to
that.
exit.
Yeah.
So like I know in my mind, or just like in my actions, I probably was showing that frustration in a way that was probably getting harder and harder for them to deal with. And so when they left, I tried to stick it out, but I think like through that frustration and just like, I don't know, maybe trying to read the tea leaves a little bit too, like there just came a point where it was like, all right, man, thanks for everything. Like, it's your time to go.
Wow.
And that was like a crate like that. Like, I was like, cool, that was it. I'm done. Like my time in skating is done. That was it. It was like, cool. I had a little run, like post skate, like, and so I reached out to like Mike and Rick, and I was like, hey, if there's anything for me, I would love to like help you guys like get this thing going. And they were like, all right, cool, like talk to Tim. And so I had started talking to Tim, and Tim, like, God bless him, like he was very like support, he was like, yeah, totally, like he was real about it from the outset. So this
is Tim Gavin, by the way, because they're already doing DVS out of Lakai,
and so to back up, Stevie was already starting to show, like he was riding chocolate boards. He was starting to show up in DVS stuff. So I could already see, like, even before the news broke, I was like, something's going on, because Stevie's not riding DCs anymore. He's starting to ride DVSs, because he was certainly on a short list of people that like they had in mind for like this new company.
For Lakai.
Yeah. And so, I mean, even to back up, like that last year I was at DC, I was going to, like, my thing was like go to LA every weekend and like hang with these guys. Cause like that's, I mean, and maybe also like those guys were reading into that too, was like, I'd leave on Friday after work. I'd drive up, stay at Chico and Carroll's house. or Scott and Dimitri's on the infamous campus,
yeah.
and we'd like we'd go we'd do the full club run Friday, Saturday, and then go skate like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I'd drive home Sunday, and clock in and do Monday to Friday and do it all. So I was doing that for a year.
I say that helped tremendously.
100%. And that's why I think like when I started like when it was like, okay, Tim, like what's going on? Like I was already like kind of in the mix. And so, yeah, then it was like, they parted ways and then I kind of, I
was transitional. It was like kind of a transitional
So
thing.
the craziest thing that was, I think it was October 1st. I was officially working at Lakai. That was like December 99, I think, or sorry, it was October 99. I was officially working at Lakai like by January of 2000. So it was like 3-ish months, and it felt like the longest 3 months of my life. I was like, dude, like, I was just like, it felt like a year.
Yeah. And
that was the last time I have not worked a day in skate. And like, I've worked consistently since January of 2000 till now in the skate footwear space.
Damn.
Wow.
So you're saying to me like Stevie was almost about to get on Lakai?
He 100% was going to get on Lakai.
Okay.
Yeah, it was him. So the conversation, it was fun. I mean, so when I finally got in there, like I did some of the outreach.
Okay.
Like it was like, okay, you talk to this guy. So I remember meeting Ave at Highland Grounds on Highland. Hey, here's the deal. And these guys were all at DC, like they were at DC, and they would go on to like, have lucrative deals and like get all these things at DC that I think like, again, were the crux of why these guys had. And
for sure.
And so at the end of the day, it all panned out the way it should have. And I don't think they had the capacity to do everything for everybody. And so I think in a lot of ways, like those guys going that direction helped
Lakai.
them. It helped like DC kind of like get right with like the people that they would build around going forward, which were like Ave and Stevie.
Because this is like
because they made Stevie the dude after that. It was like from like we don't know with Stevie after that pit, like after that moment that I was talking about, to like when it was like pretty obvious they were gonna go for Stevie. Like they gave him everything, and then there was that X Games. He's plastered all over SF, and then it was just like ignition from there. You know what I mean? And he was the dude. And again, hats off to them. Like great market. Like Ken is a great marketer.
The moment.
You know what I mean? And so. Yeah, I mean that was it, and then Ave was in that mix too, but it was like really, those guys were both on the short list to do Lakai.
Wow. You guys helped them bubble right there.
Yeah,
Jamie Thomas.
Yes, 100%. I had a conversation with Jamie Thomas about it.
Jamie Thomas on Lakai.
Yeah, that was a conversation.
What?
Yeah.
Is this coming?
That was I think maybe what led him to Circa. Was like that because Circa was in the mix at that time, and I know Dan like certainly they were trying to. Romance Danny or Colin or both of them to do Circa.
Okay.
So there was a lot of like
it
was definitely like this I don't know, this moment where there was just a lot of movement.
So even Colin McKay, there was talks.
Oh, he was pretty sure gonna ride for Circa.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Imagine the world.
I know.
Yeah, there's a lot of what if, but like
for sure.
And again, it all like everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. I feel like, but yeah, that was all like I mean, again, the crux of that, and that sort of I think led to like this more formalized agreement, just becoming a norm. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't a norm. Like there was no norm for like a footwear agreement at that point. I think it was all just kind of like this company does it this way. This
kind of
company
Wild
doesn't
West.
do it. Yeah, and I think that was like a real moment to like formalize it all a little bit more and like a step forward in formalizing it a little bit more.
Look how young they look right there.
Yeah,
so crazy, bro.
But yeah, and so again, this was like that moment in time where I'm like staying either at Dimitri and Scott's or at Carroll and Chico's and just a lot of like, I was so hyped, like the energy of like, hey, I'm in here. They're allowing me to like help. I mean, that's when I really felt like, okay, I can like help shape this thing. And, Papalardo and Welsh, they were part of like, they were part of the DC crew. Like they were getting stuff, like they came right away. Cairo was in the mix really quickly because like him and Mike were pretty tight and Mike, that was definitely Mike wanting him in there. And yeah, it was like, so it was Rick, Mike, Cairo, Welsh, Janoski came in. I think that was another one where Mike, he was like, kind of doing his thing.
Was Dan Garcia, did he come in?
He came in a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
He came in a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, we talked like, Scott came in like pretty, so funny. Keith ended up on DVS and Scott ended up on Lakai. But right away, they kind of were in this like, gray area of like, well, do we stick with DC? Because like I think again, like they felt some sense of like loyalty to DC, and they obviously saw like the potential of like what it could be.
Right.
And so I think they hung around for a minute and were like, well, is something going to pan out here? And it didn't.
Interesting.
So Keith ended up at DVS and Scott ended up at Lakai.
Was it basically just like getting a pro shoe?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think they thought like, part of it. And so like when it became pretty obvious that it was going to be Stevie and it was going to be Ave, then I whatever, I don't really know exactly what was going through their minds, but I think that was where they were like, okay, well then it makes sense for me to do this other thing.
Interesting. Yeah.
I remember in the midst of your transition, you were definitely helping with DVS for a quick second.
Oh, that was part of the deal when I got hired there. So that was the thing where it was like, you can come do this thing.
Yeah, but you got to help here.
But you have to do Dvs and Matix too. And I was like, okay, cool.
Okay.
But that was very short-lived. I know that probably was a lot to deal with.
It was probably longer than you think. Because I did some DVS tours.
No,
you and I were on the tour where you found Jeremy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There was some, but that probably would, like I said, maybe within a year, 2 years at the top.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was definitely, it was.
Because Podium was in Encino at that point, and then when it finally moved to Torrance. So I think when it moved to Torrance, that's when I was like, maybe, I mean, everything was growing pretty exponentially at that time too. So they were like, okay, everything needs its sort of individual focus.
Because you were working at the girl warehouse for a while, the girl offices also.
Well, that was toward the end.
Yes,
that was toward the end.
Yeah,
that was toward the end.
Okay. I'm getting my whole shit mixed up.
So yeah, we Lakai gets going, and again, in terms of just like experience, like and what you really like learn from being hands-on, it's like the opportunity to almost de facto be handed the keys to a company. And not that I was like, there was like a short list of us, but like, dude, to be able to shape a company without having like any of the real like hardcore responsibility of it on the back end. Like, how lucky am I to have that experience? You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah. And so again, in hindsight, like super appreciative and lucky to have been able to like, in a company that became like pretty iconic and definitive, in that era and time. So like, that's at the onset of like, all of the internet.com and social media stuff too. So like you learn all that.
Because you were there for like 15 or 16 years.
I did 15 years.
15 years.
Wow. And for them to take that chance in that moment, like you're saying, like, what an honor. And yet here we are.
But man, at the beginning, it was Rick and Mike, obviously. It was, some of the early designers, and then it became like Sung, that was a kind of a big moment where Sung came over from DC and kind of did his thing.
Okay. With Clay, too,
yeah,
right?
with Clay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Wayan even, who they were both at DC, and they came over. And whatever, that was like a big sort of leap forward, I think, for us when that happened. But really, for the first, I want to say like 6, 7, 8 years, it was me and Mueller and the team, and just like kind of whatever we wanted to do, we got to do it. And so,
So you and Andy Mueller would just sit around, come up with ideas, and then would like Mike or Rick be kind of like the end all, like, hey, we got to go
early. So early on, it was like Andy sat at Girl.
Yeah.
So he was like, pretty plugged into like Rick and Mike. So like the creative concepts were flowing through Rick and Mike via him at that time. And then I was on like kind of the team side of it. And then, obviously we started doing like travel, filming videos, et cetera, et cetera. So, but then it just got to a point where I think like me and Andy like had such a good synergy going where like it would all start with like, what's the creative concept for the catalog? And we'd come up with these like ideas. Like for, I think 2 years we did like these magazine catalog things where we would like take iconic parts of like every magazine and do our version of it in the back. And it was like, there were these magalogs. And so we did that, and then that would be the cornerstone of the season, and then that would sort of like emanate out into like what we did from like an advertising and storytelling standpoint. And I mean, he and I sat at Girl for like, I mean, we'd sit there till midnight, 1, 2 in the morning doing these things. Yeah, and it was like really just like him and I did. And again, just like this moment where we just had the keys to do whatever we wanted.
That's pretty amazing.
Things arranged.
Yeah.
But also, like, you've been there, you were there. I mean, Mueller's been there forever as well.
Yeah, he's still there.
He knows, like, the vibe and the whole thing, too.
And I will say, too, like, now that I've had a little bit different experience, like, with where, you know, my current role.
Sure.
To have that synergy with somebody that is the creative lead, and for them to just be, like, to kind of take, like, you know, we'd brainstorm a handful of ideas and then it'd be like, okay, this is it. And the direction that he would take creatively and like bring stuff to life, like I learned in hindsight that like that's an anomaly with like creative people. Like they don't like that for him to like bring my ideas to life or our ideas to life in the way that he did and not really get in the way of it from like his own, like, yeah, he's seriously an anomaly in that regard, a creative anomaly, because he's just like, oh, this is your idea, like this is what I can bring to it, and like I can do it. Whereas like, yeah, a lot of times creatives are like, oh,
they want to put their little flair
that's your
on
idea,
it.
but this is what we're doing.
There's a lot of egos, so to speak.
Yeah, there can be. So I mean, that again is one of the things in hindsight where I'm like, man, he really entertained pretty much anything we could come up with and did his thing to like make it happen without getting too whatever, just emotionally like involved with like.
But that's the best.
Yeah,
that's when everything happens.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, he, you know, and I think in that time frame, you know, the video component was happening through Ty. I think he was obviously also like a pretty big like net contributor in like those early years with like you know, it started with actually the first video that Lakai put out was at Australia. We all did a trip to Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the Outkast song.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. And it was like a little VHS tape, and it came with a zine. That was kind of like, it felt like the sort of like inaugural kickoff trip for Lakai. And it was like Australia, New Zealand. I don't know. We were there for maybe a week.
Huh.
It you know, it was like classic distributor trip. Like, come down, new brand. Like, come down. And yeah, so that was the first project. Ty did that. And then we did Beware the Flare after that.
Yep. Beware the Flare.
And that one was, it was just like a couple-week trip in Europe. And I think, you know, obviously there's a lot happening in the video space at that moment. And so, like, yeah, just to be able to... And I also think, like, I mean, there were shoe company videos happening. Like, you know, the DC video happened, but it was still, like, maybe not as much of the norm until, you know, and then Beware the Flare hit, and it got a lot of traction, actually, for a tour video.
That was amazing.
Yeah. And I think that was the spark, was like, okay, we should do, you know, we should try to do something.
Like a full length.
Full length. And then, you know,
I just love the personalities that were shown in and Beware the Flare. Like Beeble.
Yeah.
Dude, Beeble, when he came in that video, I was like, this is my guy. This is maybe the funniest dude I've ever even heard of.
Incredible.
And Welsh. Too.
Yeah.
Those guys together were pretty incredible.
Yeah, iconic stuff though. So what you're saying is like the Beware the Flare, all this stuff led to the conversations of like making it full length and then fully flared. Coming into the picture.
And obviously, you know, when you're part of the you know, the Girl and Chocolate conglomerate, I think it's just natural that people are going to be like, you guys should make a video.
100%. 100%. I mean, you're looking at the best skateboarders.
And then having Ty, I think had maybe come out like in between Beware the Flare, and then and then it was they were probably looking at okay, what makes the most sense, and then
how was that process to fully flare? It seemed like a
flared.
It was pretty flared.
Yeah.
I just remember being in that premiere and seeing this explosions going off and just this it was the most epic thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that thing obviously took on a life of its own, as it's been pretty well chronicled.
Totally.
That it took on a life of its own. And when Mark came on the team that also, I think, you know, we all know what Mark's output capability is.
Totally.
And so to have somebody that we knew could, whatever, kind of like be a cornerstone of it, that certainly helped. And I'm sure it was like, you know, Modus was in that time frame too. So like, you know, Carroll and Mark were part of that. So whatever, everything's like kind of in the ether.
For sure, for sure.
And so, yeah, it was like, okay, it's Lakai's time. So, you know, we all know the dynamics of like, in the beginning, it was just like, we're making a video. Mm-hmm. And it was cool. You know, the trips were good.
Right.
And, you know, the team was rad. And
did Mark go to Chocolate first or Lakai first?
It's a good question.
I think
it was Lakai because we did enjoy shoes.
Okay.
When he
right.
was, when he was first on.
Right.
Yeah. Then it was Chocolate.
Yeah, shit gets blurry.
Because the Lakai video took what, 4 years?
It came out in November 2007. I bet.
I thought that was like a 5-6 year thing.
So we started. I want to say, when did Beware the Flare come out?
2002,
2003,
2, I think.
2002.
Yeah.
We probably started like flirting with the idea in 2003. We went on this trip. It was like we went on a trip to Arizona. It was like Rick, Spike, D-Gar was there, Danny Garcia.
Okay.
And it was just sort of this like unofficial, like, okay, we're doing this video.
Yeah.
And I remember Spike put like a smoke bomb in his shoe. And like that was like whatever. All right, the effects of this thing are gonna be really rad.
Right.
And so that was the sort of unofficial start. And I think it like bumped along for maybe a year-ish after that.
That was one of the most highly anticipated videos.
Well, yeah, because then in that time, Eric comes around.
True. They had to wait to put it out, right? Because Eric had to get footage, or no?
Sorry, back up. Guy comes around.
Guy
comes
around.
around.
Okay,
Sorry, back up. Guy comes around. So Guy, you know, Rick, whatever. It's pretty obvious that Guy's like getting interested again and has a little bit of a spark. And so we were like, cool, yeah, like, you know, he
wants to film a full part.
Well, yeah, we were giving him shoes and he's skating. We're not sure like where he's gonna go, and then it's like pretty obvious like he's gonna like lock in and like really do what he did. Mm-hmm. And so in that process, we actually gave him a shoe.
Right.
So he had several Lakai shoes, and so he brought everybody was like, guys, like he's gonna have this part. You know, it'd been forever. It'd been a long time since and so I think it started to get out there. They're like, wow, Guy's gonna have this. Like, it's gonna be insane. And that was really what was like. Clearly, there was Mark. Mm-hmm. Everybody knew that was gonna be nuts. Then Guy came on, and it was like, oh shit, Guy's gonna have this part, and everybody got sparked on that. Then Eric came along. That's when it was just like, okay, this is insane. Yeah. And so there was some of like waiting for Eric to like kind of get to where he felt like he wanted to be. And then then also like at the same time you have like Mike Mo doing what Mike Mo's doing.
Yeah.
You have we had put together like sort of all these satellite crews and like the what we called the Royal Fam, Jensen, Jensen and Brady, and Lucas. Then like we had the French Connection, which was like Gigi, Lucas, and JB.
Yep.
We had Jesus. So like that whole like we'd been doing trips out there with those guys, and like that whole thing was like becoming like, the Frenchies definitely like shocked it pretty hard in that one, and so like you had all that happening at the same time, which I don't even think people really were like expecting any, like they weren't really thinking about any of that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it was just. I'm just. Then you have Alex. Alex in there.
Also,
yeah, Papalardo.
Yeah.
And it, I mean, I'll never forget that, filming that intro, and the dynamic was definitely like you could feel it. People were like ready for it to be done at that time.
I'm sure.
And so everybody showed up, and there wasn't a lot of like Rick and Ty and Spike were really driving like that conversation about what was going to happen for that intro. And so like we knew something was going on, but we didn't really know. And then everybody kind of showed up and they're like, whoa, okay, like this is nuts. And I felt like it was a moment where everybody kind of was like, all right, this is it. There'd been it was tense, you know what I mean? And it was like, okay, it felt like, all right, this is it. And obviously seeing it all play out in real time, amazing. And I think it was like, all right, like we're here, we're doing it. And then the premiere at Royce Hall was nuts. For sure, one of the like highlights of my life.
Yeah,
something special.
Just to see all that on the big screen as well, you know.
Was the intro the last thing you guys filmed for the video?
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone
that intro was filmed. I think we premiered the video on a Thursday. I think it was filmed like the weekend before that.
Oh wow,
that was nuts. They were turning that thing around so fast.
Holy shit.
So I mean, whatever. Maybe that's a little bit. Maybe it wasn't 4 days, but it was a very tight window. Yeah.
But I can see that. I can see how everybody was just kind of like relieved, and this was kind of like the grand finale of like, oh, we're done. Right. We are done. No more tours. No more van life.
Right.
This is done.
We can move on.
No more countdown clock.
No more countdown.
The countdown
clock.
Oh yeah, that was me. People hated me for the countdown.
That was your idea?
Yeah, it was. Actually.
Keep the pressure.
There was a lot of stress involved.
Because we all know, like in skating, like things get pushed back and they get pushed back and they get pushed back.
Well, that was another thing. So in the process of making this, they had done Skate More. Because there was it was like the dynamic was girl and podium. And so a lot of the funding for the project was happening through the marketing side of Podium. And so the last couple years, like Skate More had happened. I think Skate More came out in 2005.
Yes.
And so I think like, it was a time where people were like, where our videos done? Like, do people care about videos anymore? And so, the girl videos, I think like were big revenue generators, and I think like maybe Podium was looking at Skate More as like it was going to be this like a pretty big revenue generator, and I think it did well, but maybe it didn't generate like the type of revenue that they expected, and so that kind of fed into like the last couple years of making the video where they weren't seeing the return on investment. They were looking at it as a 1-to-1 of like what's the video going to generate for the video, not what is it going to generate for the brand in general. And so it was like becoming this thing where like to make some of these things happen at the end, like these trips, it was getting harder and harder. So that's why I was kind of in the middle. Like I was trying to manage all that stuff where it's like, hey, we're running out of time, we're running out of money, we can't do this. And that's why the Motel 6 trips became a thing, frankly, is because Ty was like, Ty doesn't take no for an answer. Like
he's going out there no matter what.
Yeah, he's like, well, we still have skating to do, and so if you're saying we don't have money to do this, well, we're just going to do it this style. And that maybe probably fed into like some of the sort of animosity that happened at the end, because it was like, these guys are on the road traversing the entire U.S. out till all hours of the night, and then they'd go to a Motel 6 for 5 hours, you know what I mean? And then do it all over again.
Well, because it ties on a mission.
100%.
And I think a lot of that frustration came from those missions of like just, I mean, what you're getting into by going on a Thai tour.
Right.
But
that was all driven by like kind of the financial dynamic of it, right? And so, yeah, that last, and especially like that, the intro segment, that was a lot of Spike like calling in favors from people that he was working with.
Totally.
And so
goodness, thanks, Spike.
Yeah. So when it all came out and it had the acclaim that it did, like obviously that was a relief and helped a lot.
Well, it changed the game for sure. That video definitely changed the landscape.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a marker for a moment in time, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, just the level of skating that those guys were doing in that video was just bonkers.
Yeah.
But also, what's interesting too to me is like when a big video comes out, sometimes there's like a exodus. And a lot of people left Lakai after that.
Yeah, 100%. That video, I mean, again, you look at Lakai forming and what that did for people, for their careers, and for their finances. Like that video kind of had the same effect for people. And at the time you get wrapped up in it and you're like, you just feel some type of way, and but at the end of the day, we were not going to be able to do all those things for all those people.
Yeah.
And so I can look back at it now and say like, yeah, a lot of it hurt at the time because I just felt like we had done a lot to try to like elevate all of them and elevate the company to a level where I thought like we were really going to get on this like growth path to like really whatever, just generate the revenue to be able to do like all these like other big things in the space.
Right.
The bummer was at the same time the whole subprime thing happened, right? So the whole like subprime mortgage crisis. The Lakai video came out in 2007. Okay. Subprime happened like right after that. So we have this giant brand marketing moment in this time where like you know, the economically things were going to get really interesting.
Shifted real quick.
Yeah. Damn. And so, you know, I think for that reason, people, again, like I think like when you factor that part of it in, we were not going to be able to do everything for everybody.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, you know, Alex leaves, does his thing. Papalardo leaves, does his thing. Dgar actually had already left up to that point. Because I think he was just like, I can't do this video thing. He was already on S. I think. Like, he's just like, this video is like, I can't do this. You know, Eric leaves in pretty short order after that. And so, yeah, like, and at that time too, like with all Podium's trying to navigate a lot of finance, because what happened was like, there was a lot of growth that was dependent on these sort of like majors and mid-major like kind of action sports retail chains. And it was a bit of a house, you know, once subprime hit and like the leverage started to go away and like banks are coming looking for payments on like, you know, loan covenants, it all just kind of starts to like domino. And
is this a time also when PacSun pulled out of their
it was like
their
all
deal?
that shit.
That was the big box.
Active, so it's like you got all this inventory that's like just kind of sitting there, so it's just money that's like it just you can't move through it. And so that's when the conversation started about, or I don't know, like that's when it was like, okay, does what's gonna happen, because I think there was a focus on the core parts of Podium, which I get because those were the big revenue drivers, but like Dvs and Matix, I think they were real focused on like, okay, how do we right the ship here? And Lakai was maybe not so, like, it wasn't the primary focus of those conversations. So I think maybe that's where it was like, well, does Lakai just go its own way and go to girl?
Right.
And so all that kind of starts to happen within that time frame, you know, that 2008, 2009 time frame. And so when people are leaving, in my mind, it was like, okay, all these people left, but we still have a pretty good core group of people that, like, if we can get to this place and stabilize it from like a business standpoint, we still have a pretty, you know, a good core group of people that can shepherd it into like kind of a quote unquote like new era. Right?
Totally.
And then Mike Mo left, and then that was it.
That's when Mike Mo went to DC.
Yeah.
I talked to Mike Mo about all that stuff. I love like hearing the numbers that people were getting thrown back then. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Numbers were crazy in your shoe game.
They were psycho.
For sure.
Yeah, what DC was trying to do, I mean, they were getting some dues, but they were paying a pretty penny, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and at that point, it's like, okay, cool. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you know, hope it works out, and you know, whatever. You
can't even get mad at him for leaving at that point,
no,
right?
I could still, you know, for a lot of reasons, wonder if like that was the best thing for his career trajectory. But you could always hindsight that kind of stuff. You know, what I mean?
For
you never know at the time. But like, I wonder that I think about that a lot. Like, what
could have been?
What if? I mean, maybe it wouldn't have been different at all, and maybe it would just eventually have gone somewhere else, just based on things that ended up happening, sort of after you know, after that. But
timing is,
and I don't want to say like that was the moment that, like, I mean, whatever, we got in there and did, you know, like it stabilized to the point where, like, you know, I mean, it's obviously still it's still there and it's still relevant and they're still doing cool stuff.
We got Mike Mo rediscovering the road here.
Yeah, I know it was hard for him to turn down that type of money, bro. At the end of the day, and I think being in that position is very rare. You know what I'm saying? So
I heard that he was like, no, I'm good, I'm chilling, I'm good, and then they were just like kept going.
Yeah. He did. So it's funny, like he and I would text quite a bit in that time, and you know, he was real about, like, he was a team player, you know, and he was real about it. And I think it was just like they wouldn't relent. They wouldn't relent. They wouldn't relent. And I think he just finally was like, well,
Gave
I mean,
in.
yeah, you know, and I get it.
And then his buddies are doing it. You got Sean, you got Mikey.
But at the outset, he was real about like, you know, he even was like, you know, Lakai wasn't just Eric. You know, when Eric left, he's like, Lakai is great because it's this group of people. It's not just about Eric. And so he had like that mindset where he could think about it big picture. And I was like, that's rad. Like he, you know, he's thinking about like the team aspect of this thing. And then eventually, you know, but whatever. It's like, I get it. Like he just got like, I mean, to your point, they just didn't, they didn't leave him alone until he said yes.
Yeah.
And I think the number kept going up and up and up and up in that time.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
Then he's like, then he's playing the game now. He's like, all right, let me just see what they're going to say this time. All right, I think this is the one.
Oh, man.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah. And then, I mean, so 2010, that's when we're fully like in girl. Like the podium
separation.
You know, the podium separation had happened. And then I did 5 more years.
5 more years
at girl. And it was like me, Scott
Johnston,
and then Jeff, Mike.
That was rad too. I love that element of it too. Is like not only was Scott Johnston just a legend skateboarder, but here he is now, like in the office designing shoes, like putting his next passion into play.
Totally.
Yeah.
Which I thought was
another
rad.
one that like I think, you know, when I talk about these experiences that you glean through these moments at these brands that like allow you an opportunity to get to the places that he and I are at now.
Sure.
I'd like to think that is still out there, but I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's so invaluable, that experience. Like he's a lead designer at Audi now from like hands-on, like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It does not happen, you know? And so just how fortunate we are to have been at these brands, and given the opportunities we were given at these brands to gain these skill sets, to get to these places, you know,
and Mike it as well.
Yeah,
100%.
100%.
Straight up.
Yeah. And again, institutions of higher learning, like we were at some of the greater institutions of higher learning within skateboarding.
For sure.
Clearly.
For sure.
And so, I mean, we did it. And, you know, I think for me, by the time I got to the point that I got to make the decision I made, it was like everything was cool. It was stable, but it was not going to progress for me.
Interesting.
And I just got to a place where I was like, I feel like I still have a lot to give, and there's a lot I want to learn still.
Right.
And I don't, you know what I mean? Like I have an opportunity to go to a place where the sky's the limit.
I was going to say that.
You know what I mean? And so like, again, now that I'm there, I understand how fortunate I was to have that window open for me and to jump through it and to do it pretty seamlessly, to be honest with you, at the level that I'm at. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I think that comes with like Nike.
And again, I think that just comes with like the sort of the amalgamation of experiences I'd had up to that point. It like prepared me in a way that I don't even think I was fully aware of at the time when I jumped through it. And I was able to like just hit the ground running for the most part.
Okay.
Because I knew the way all the pieces kind of fit together. And because when you get into a place like that, it's very layered. You know what I mean? It's called like swim lanes. Like a lot of people refer to it as swim lanes, where like you kind of have your lane and you kind of do your thing.
Okay.
And so I understood how like all those things fit together in a way that I think allowed me to like, just get into the role quickly and like not, you know, there's obviously some onboarding and some learning, and a lot of that's just learning the language of a place. But in terms of like just understanding what this function did and this function does and how brand, you know, has to help drive all the experiences up to that point were so
crucial,
unknowingly invaluable to like get in. And that's, it's just like, people ask me all the time, like, how do you get in this job? How do you get in this job? And I'm like, well, I just had these opportunities that I don't know. I can't tell you, like, go work at this shoe company and go through this exponential growth phase of this shoe company.
Right.
go to this one, do the same thing in this moment where, you know, social media is becoming a thing, and so you're getting all the experience of that. It's like, it's you know,
can, because like at the end of the day, you had these were your not only your business people, they were your friends.
Yeah,
true. You know? So that's a whole
True.
different like ball game,
Right.
You know what I mean? Your experience is going to be a lot different.
Right.
Had that been
Right.
you're just boss from the beginning.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Not to say that you can't
No, of
not
course
do
not.
that,
He's
but
doing
yeah,
just that
you were
now.
yeah.
blessed to be.
But
in
now
the-
I just think
Yeah.
the path is maybe a little bit different than the path that I've had.
Sure.
And I like to try to convince myself that like my path is still there. It's a little bit of a, you know,
I think
you
it's,
have to
I think
navigate
it's still
it
there.
a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like, you know, that's at least partly what I'm trying to like get across in this whole thing, is that like to believe in yourself, believe in the experiences that you have through these opportunities, because they do give you the tools that you need to be at a place like the place I'm at now.
Sure.
And it's just a matter of like, I just think a lot of times people don't believe they have those tools, because they don't, it's a language thing. You know what I mean? It's like they don't necessarily speak that language. They have the tools, but they don't speak the language to be able to translate it. And now that's what I understand. I didn't even have it at the outset. You know what I mean? I realized I just had people that believed in me and knew that like what I had contributed was valuable enough to like contribute at this place. And then I got in there and learned the language pretty quickly.
Okay.
It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah.
just are like, oh, okay, I understand like what this means, what this acronym means, like blah, 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 blah. And then experience wise, I was not out of my depths, like really in many situations right away.
Right. You've already been there, done
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you even go from the Lakai to Nike? What
Yep.
was the transition there?
So the transition was probably, I don't know, in 2014 into 2015, I think I started having this awareness that like, hey, you know, it kind of is what it is here. And, you know, I still have like a curiosity to do more and grow more personally. And so obviously I was friendly with Hunter. And I just maybe floated it by him somewhere at some point and was like, hey, if you ever, you know, because they do a fair amount of talent planning there, and I was like, if you're ever doing that, and like you like throw my name out there. And so I think that happened, and at a certain point he was like, hey, are you really serious about this? And I was like, you know what, like let's talk.
Okay.
And so we talked a bit, and then you know, I think I eventually went up there and met a couple people, and then it was kind of like, okay, you know, I put something semi-formal together to just give people that weren't familiar with me
Kind of like a
snapshot.
resume or something.
Yeah,
like a
built a
little-
deck
okay.
basically.
Gotcha.
And sent that up there, and then kind of played the waiting game a little bit. You know, I think that like people will tell you that it moves slow there until it doesn't, and it moves really fast. And so I
Okay.
think like there was maybe a year where it was just like, you know, there'd be a little check-in here and there, and then, you know, somebody moved on, and there was a moment. It was like, all right, you're up, and it happened. It went from like 0 to 100 real quick, and I think from that moment until I had an offer, I mean, it wasn't even a couple weeks.
Oh shit.
There had been a lot of conversation up to that point, but it was like, all right, you're up, and you know, there's a lot that goes into like getting, especially somebody outside of the organization, like so you know the people that were in the leadership positions there at the time, like did what they had to do to like move things quickly, and then you know, it was a Friday I got the call, and then on that following Monday is when I had to like go in and have the conversation, which was obviously you know, after doing everything for that long with people that were, you know, great friends and mentors
Right.
for so long, it's not easy. But I have to tell you, I was also in this space where like it felt like I just didn't want to I didn't want it to end in a way that like casted a cloud or a shadow over all these great things
Right.
that had happened and the great friendships I had built. And to me, it was a way to like get away from it before I got to that place where it was just like, irreparable. You know what I mean? It was just, it just felt like I was like, man, this just feels like it's gonna end in a way where like we're not gonna be friends anymore or something. And I didn't want that to happen.
That's dope. You forecasted that.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to happen that way. And it was just like, man, and it was obviously hard for everybody at first, and you know, there was a little bit of time where there wasn't a lot of conversation, but you know, it all kind of came back around, and I think like, you know, and again, in hindsight, I think everybody understood like the point of view, and I think like for me, it had the intended effect of like, now, you know, whatever, like I'm still great friends with all those people, you know, with everybody
for sure.
And so that was kind of
bittersweet.
Yeah.
How was the transition though? Like, I mean, you obviously moved up to Portland. You had to like take your whole family up there and everything, and then get acclimated to learning this new lingo we're talking about and all that stuff.
It was fast. I mean, it all, you know, the first couple years was fast, and you know, at a place like that, things are always kind of in motion in some capacity. So you kind of figure one thing out, and then like there's some movement, and there's a little bit of a different approach. So you got to like spend some time to figure that part of it out in the approach. And so, you know, it probably took me 3-ish years to like fully understand like, okay, this is all the puzzle pieces, and this is kind of how they fit together.
Puzzle pieces in what? Like just who's doing what and this and that, and there. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of moving pieces over there. Yeah, I mean, it's a big company.
So at its core level, it's brand, it's product, and it's marketplace, right? Like that's the sort of triad that like drives, I think, most brands. But like that's an easy way to look at it and digest it, right? You have marketplace, which is like, you know, it's retail, it's digital retail, it's like basically everywhere where consumers have access to your product. And then you have product, which is all the product, and then you have brand, which is kind of the intermediary between like product and marketplace. It's like you're taking what the product team is doing, and you're building plans and stories to like then bring to the marketplace. And the crux of brand is like, it's understanding the consumer. It's knowing who you're trying to reach. It's having an authentic connection to the consumer, and then it's understanding the right stories to build and tell to the consumer, and where and how to deliver those.
Which you're familiar with,
right?
Obviously.
In the skate, and so in the skate space, like I obviously, and so, you know, within each one of those silos there's different components. So within brand, there's like the design, like the creative design component. There's like the comms component, which is PR. There's like the social media component. There's like the digital, like what's called digital brand component. And then marketplace has its own thing with like, you know, the different touch points within marketplace, and then product's its own engine. But for brand, essentially what you're doing is, you're looking at it two ways. You're looking at it as a year-long arc, but you're also looking at it as a seasonal arc, and you're essentially trying to craft what are the stories that are going to resonate the most with the consumer that we want to connect with. And then how do you bring product, you know, sometimes the stories are built into the products, which I think SB does a really good job of, is like building those stories into the products upstream. Other times you just kind of take the product for what it is. You understand understand the design insights. You know, if it's tied to an athlete, you understand like what the athlete insights were. And then you just, you craft the story. You craft the story from there.
How does it work going in, like presenting something to someone that you work with, that your show, because you are like you run the show kind of for the most part for skateboarding?
I mean, there's a team. There's a team. So I have my counterparts we have a specialist who's a little bit more like on the product side. Like they're the ones that are responsible for like really getting the product we need to the places we need, like in alignment. So, you know, if you're doing a shoot, for instance, like they're the ones that are like orchestrating with the product teams and the product ordering teams, like to get product where it needs to be in time. And then you have a director that's a little bit more strategic thinking, like longer term. And then I'm kind of in the middle of that, which is the manager.
Okay, like so, like it's interesting to like if you have these ideas and like, you're telling the higher ups And was that like explaining to them about like why this is important for skateboarding?
You know, it's not really that. It's not really one-to-one like that.
Okay.
So we, luckily for us, I think we have, people understand we have a rhythm going. Our team, it's a pretty small team now, but I think everybody understands like, hey, everybody that's a part of this team between like the there's sports marketing too, which I kind of left out, like they're in service of like the skateboarders. But that, you know, we all have like we work well together, and we have like a really authentic connection to like the different parts, the different parts of the team that we drive. And so we don't really have to make a lot of presentations to people to sell in our ideas, essentially. Yeah. Our product, you know, it all starts with product. And our product team is great. Again, tight team, you know, some folks that have been there for a while, and some folks that are bringing some new energy. So like, they totally understand our, our dynamic and our approach, and that they're great about building stories into the product, like upstream, which certainly helps like us when we get to like the downstream part of like telling the stories. That's maybe where you would have to do quote unquote like the most selling in, I guess. And that team, again, like they get it, and I think even they're, the people that they have to like have those conversations with get it. There's always going to be like a wild card moment, but for the most part, like when you've been, it's 20 years, like this is the 20th year of SB. I think there's a general understanding that like the group that's there know what they're doing, and they know how to do it in an authentic way, and so they don't get too in the weeds of it and put us through some of those. We go through all the gates across everything, but like it's not like it's more of an awareness thing, I would say. Like they just want to be aware of like what's happening in the event that, like, you know, sometimes they do need to like put their thumb on the scale and say, hey, like, you know, reel it in here, do this, whatever. But like it's really like they just like to be that there's an awerenness of like, okay, cool, yeah, you guys are totally, and we have our little, you know, I don't want to say a total formula, but we have like between signature and then the stories we tell through donks, we have a pretty good like rhythm going with like what we do. I mean,
you guys have a lot of stories going on all the time.
Totally.
Like new shoes to
yeah.
That's a lot of stuff going on.
So it can get. I mean, for us, I think what gets tricky, to your point, is there's a lot, and so it's like, how do you balance everything and give it the right weight, give everything the right weight? I mean, so we probably spend most of our time like just orchestrating that in a way where it's gonna cut through and you can elevate every story that you need to elevate in the right way. So
well, congrats on 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years. Great. Yeah. So it's not that difficult to. It sounds to me like you guys are your own team, and people, the higher ups, just want to be informed on kind of what you guys have going on and coming out. Yeah. But you guys can kind of have free reign over.
And so we're all, you know, not to get too in the weeds of it, but when I went there, it was called what's called like a category offense, where everything was really set up based on like, you know, the sport dimension. So like basketball was kind of set up as its own thing.
Gotcha.
Global football. Was like what we call soccer. Was set up as its own thing.
Golf,
running,
everything.
Set up its own thing. Training, set up its own thing. And so now it's a little bit of a different approach, and you know, this is all like, if you follow it, this is not like
insider
information that you can't get, but now it's more set up by men's, women's, and kids.
Okay.
And so there's not really like those kind of vertical category approaches anymore. So I guess to your point, Kelly, like before it was everything was happening like within the category reference. So we were all like, you know, it was a lot easier to check in and be on the same page, and because we all kind of sat together. And now it's set up a little bit differently between like brand, product, and marketplace. Luckily, brand and product sit in the same building now, so it's easy for us to stay on the same page. And then, you know, we interface with like our marketplace teams pretty regularly. But I mean, I will say, like, for me, I have the benefit of like understand, like I got there when there was a category offense. I got to understand all the pieces, And then so when things started to move and get kind of like reconfigured, I knew enough to know how to kind of navigate the new landscape of it in a way that it allowed us to retain our approach from a consumer POV without any hiccups. You know what I mean? So like as we're kind of navigating a new landscape internally and whatever, like, again, there's just churn at a place like that you're just always going to have to like, you're just going to be, you just have to be comfortable with always being in motion.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with like continuing to evolve. And so like, I think that's one of my strongest suits right now is understanding skateboarding and you know, the right ways to connect with skateboarders and tell authentic stories, but also being able to understand like all of the internal nuance of a place like that and the movement of it, and knowing how to like navigate the movement of it to get to the places that allow us to partner with the right people to tell the right stories the right way.
Because it's a moving ship, and the whole thing is you're a part of that ship.
Yes.
So you have to kind of
and you have to just, if you get in a place where you're like, oh well, I'm only comfortable operating this way. You have to keep your mind open to being like, okay, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have to go through a little bit of a different process than I was used to, but I can still get to the end goal. Like I can still get to the intended end goal. You just have to be okay with that, because if you're just like, I only work one way and that's the only way I know how to work, it can be tough. It can just be hard. Like, you know, it can just, and you know, that's just like, that's not to like knock people.
But you have to adapt.
You
got to adapt to the landscape, right? You got to adapt to what's going on.
Otherwise, it's going to be short-lived.
Right. I mean, that's like just
any place, really.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you're like a day to day, I mean, everybody down there in the skateboarding division, like, we're talking about like pretty much all like skateboarders, right?
Yeah,
or
I mean, there's definitely some people
in
some roles above my role that aren't from it, but like their strength is they've been at Nike for a long time and they understand how to navigate like that strategic component, and even the resource component a little bit,
right?
But yeah, the core group of people that are really like kind of driving it day in and day out are people that have been in it for a while,
and that's important.
Yeah, 100%.
For sure.
1,000%.
Nothing would work over there if it wasn't skaters running it. You know,
and again, it's the authenticity thing, and they understand that. You know, they understand it, because, I mean, if you look back into the iterations of Nike and skateboarding before they, you know, had that sort of like light bulb moment where they're like, hey, we have to do Nike on skateboarding's terms.
Yeah.
You know, we can't do skateboarding on Nike's terms. Just the authenticity that like comes with like, I think there's an awareness that like we have to always like understand that like, you know, we're in a space that maybe we're not born from, and so like we have to have the people in here that are born from it to like stay authentic in it and like connect with people the right way.
Make it relevant.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about before, you and Andy Mueller, you'd stay until 12 at night in the office and everything.
Right.
Completely different now. You've adapted to what is going on, what their mode of operation is, right?
And it's not to say like you don't have that same level of passion where like you can give that type, but yeah, it's a little bit of a different, like, you just, and it's good, you know. I mean, I think what me and Andy did in that time, it was fun and rad, and it was like, you know, an invaluable experience that I would never trade. But is it the healthiest thing in the world? You know what I mean? Is it the best thing for like your family dynamic?
Sure.
And you know, your personal dynamic? I don't know, maybe not. And so I think that's the thing where like the balance is a little bit better.
Because it's from like that was like from like a private sector versus like a corporate structure.
Yeah.
You know, and you had your own reign, so to say.
And even just team, you know, like it's. I mean, yeah, it's just a different. Like, it is cool to have just like a core group of people that are driving everything, but it's also really cool to have a team of people where you can depend on them and their level of expertise or something, where you don't have to be in the weeds on everything, you know. And that to me, like, you know, maybe there's like a little bit of an adjustment period where you're like, why aren't they talking to me about this? Like, I was in all those decisions, like where I was before. You get to a point where you're like, okay, this is your opportunity to influence that, and you just have to be comfortable with like where the specialist in this, like the person that specializes in this part of the equation,
right,
may put a little bit of a, they'll put their own sort of expertise on it, and that's fine. That's what you want. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to just like start and end with like,
one
individual, a small group of people.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So, that part of it, I think
it's good.
It's super.
Healthy.
And again, that's having the right people in those places. You're just like, all right, I totally trust this person to do this, and I totally trust like their team, the people. There's even layers above that where like you're looking at best practices from across the spectrum of like everything that they do, and like you don't realize like how that's incredible knowledge to have when you can just like
for sure
look at those types of resources and be like, oh, okay, I would have never thought of something like that, but this learning from this place can be applied here in a way that we would have probably never gotten out of our own way to like try to apply it.
For sure. No, it's interesting because like I feel like the majority of skateboarders, I mean, this conversation is great because like a lot of people, they just know Nike. They don't know the inside. They don't know who works down there and the skateboarders that are in charge of the skateboarding divisions and stuff like that. So I think it's important to kind of have an understanding of how it's operated,
And obviously like in those like sort of formative years after multiple iterations of trying to get in there and like maybe people like not totally certain of like the long-term commitment to it, I could see where like, okay, you can drum all that stuff up in your head, but like when you're 2 decades into something like and you've done it in a way that's like clearly authentic and connecting with people in the right way, you just have to believe they have people that are connected to it,
totally,
that like actually
for it to work
going on
100%.
Well, those first ads that came out with a long time ago, where it was like Reese at Pulaski with Chris Hall and stuff like that. I'm like, that was like right then was like, oh, they're actually doing it right this time.
They're on the right path.
Yeah.
You see it from every, I mean, skaters, like they love to hate, you're going to see it on every side of it like, I mean, it's an interesting thing having Nike come in because there's going to be every other argument about this side of it or that side of it or whether this or this or this or skate brands and blah, 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 blah. It's never going to end.
Yeah.
But
here's the irony of that to me is like we're in this thing that's like so progressive.
Sure.
But we can get stuck in this place where like it can only be at this point and it can't evolve past this point. You know what I mean? So it's like a strange irony where it's like this thing that like by virtue of what it is, it's like infinite and progressive. But then we get so stuck in like, but it can only be this one way. It can't evolve. Like it can't evolve past this, but the whole damn thing is like just constant evolution.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And so like even going back, I'm like, dude, I don't want to be that cranky dude who's like, this was the only good time. It's like it's always gonna keep moving forward. And like
bro.
And so like I look at like what's going on in the world in general. I'm like, man, there's like there's people that are just stuck in time that think like it was only good in 1950 and like that's the like they're just trying to turn the clock back to 1950 and say like this is the only time it was good. Everything else sucks. All like get everybody else out of here. It's like, dude, I don't want to be that guy in skating. And so
a
like
lot of people.
these brands and these like it's just part of the evolution of it. And like I guess for me, that was also a moment where I'm like, I don't want to just be that cranky dude that holds the sign up and it's just like, hands off my whatever.
Well, and the way that I look at it too is like Nike's going to be there, Adidas is going to be there, like these companies are going to be there, but I want people in those places like a Kelly Bird, like people that know how to run, that are true skateboarders at heart, rather than just some suits coming in and you know what I mean? Like
it's not gonna work like that. It's just not.
Right. It's going to be here no matter what.
Totally.
So I want people in there like that know how to run it.
But also too, like, I mean, look, like the way that these places just, again, by virtue of what they're trying to do in like a broader space, are pushing skating forward and the participation in skateboarding forward.
For sure.
Like, I think that's, that part of it is really rewarding to me.
Totally.
Is because at the end of the day, like what you're trying to do is you're trying to create new skateboarders. I mean, that's like a Lance Mountain thing, right? Like that's the thing he always says, like, my duty was to create new skateboarders. And I think holistically as brands, we're trying to create new skateboarders. And I definitely think like brands like Nike and some of these bigger brands that are in the space now, like they're very aware and conscious of enabling opportunity to create new skateboarders. You know 100%, what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think people get lost in that. Like, you know, for instance, like when we do collaborations and people are like so puzzled, like, well, why are you doing a collaboration with like, they're not the best skaters. You know what I mean? Like they're not like it's like, well, they're doing things to create new skateboarders in spaces that like we, you know, maybe previously just didn't have whatever, just people weren't doing it the right way in those spaces or just weren't paying attention or weren't like whatever, you know. And I look at a lot of the stuff that like has happened even in the last year, 18 months with like, you know, I'm wearing the sweatshirt now, but like Fro Skate, what we've done a ton of cool stuff with Skate Like a Girl, and you know, the list is on and on and on, but like at the end of the day, like I don't know if those opportunities are being facilitated if brands that are having a bigger awareness of like that cultural importance are also driving that point of view in the skate space as well. So
well, they have the resources to do so. So I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Again, by having people like you in the place to actually push it in an authentic way.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, if you're creating new skateboarders and you're giving people opportunities and the tools to like bring new people into the space, then I mean,
it's a W.
Yeah.
100%. For sure.
100%.
When a shoe like the Janoski makes its appearance, that, I mean, because I like, there's not that many skate shoes that it's in skateboarding. Like P-Rod has had 10, you know, and then like, but here's this one shoe, Janoski comes in and just kills it. And it becomes this like staple of like the SB program.
Right.
I mean, that's got to be like a weird but like fascinating thing to have happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in the world's wearing these things, not only just skaters. It's crossed over.
Right.
Which is very important for a skate shoe to survive. I mean, we see it all the time in skateboarding too, the D3 and the Kenny and the, you know,
Very true.
all this stuff.
Yep.
So that must have been wild when that thing just took fire.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't there when that happened.
Right.
And so I don't know like all the nuance of you know, how it came to be. I do. James Arizumi, who coincidentally was at Lakai, kind of like cut his design teeth. I think his footwear design teeth at Lakai. He's been at Nike, I think, over 20 years now.
Shout out to James.
Yeah,
straight up.
Yeah, he's done some incredible things there. His trajectory there is incredible.
Sick.
So he was, I think the lead design for that project. And my understanding is that it wasn't the most popular. I think they didn't look at it as pure innovation.
He had to fight for it.
I think like him and Stefan had to like dig in on it because like, you know, it's a very innovation driven company. And I think like if you look at a shoe like that, you don't automatically think innovation, even though there's a ton of innovation built into it.
But I think that just because it goes to show that like you can innovate without innovating.
Totally.
The simplicity aspect of
it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they stood their ground, and I think like they put a lot of value on like the voice. You know, you hear a lot like the voice of the athlete, like listen to the voice of the athlete. So, you know, I think they were able to sort of lean into that to continue to drive you know, the point that they were
for sure
that they were trying to get to. And then they got there and you know, I don't even think it took off right away. I think it took a little bit and then it took off.
Taking off is an understatement. Wow.
No doubt, bro.
But even being there and not being a part of it, I mean, it just still must be wild.
Well, I understand the importance of it because to have, you know, to create a silhouette that is a certified classic in any space in Nike is it's hard to do, and it's important. And really, it's kind of the only silhouette that was created from the ground up in SB, that is a certified classic within Nike. I mean, think of it you have the Dunk, you have the Blazer. Sure. Those aren't born of skateboarding. They're adopted by skateboarding and adapted for skateboarding, but they're not born from skateboarding. You know what I mean? So like to have that, I mean, I really do think like at different, you know, that shoe has meant a lot in the trajectory of SB because it is the one, you know, we could always lean on having a certified classic born within SB.
Right.
And again, like once you start to like kind of see the macro of it and how it operates, like you really understand like how important it is to be able to lean onto something, to be able to lean on something like that.
And it's funny because like Nike doesn't make that decision. It's like the population makes that decision.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. I think the Janoski is just a fascinating example of like.
I mean, it will always stand the test of time, and I think like it'll be one of those shoes that like kind of comes in and out. You know, right now there's been a little bit of a reset with it, so like kind of it's been out of the market for a little bit to kind of like recreate the demand, and it's getting ready to come back into the market next year. So like but I think it's just one of those shoes that's always going to ebb and flow like that because it is such a timeless design.
That thing went to outer space.
Straight up.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and just like like just understanding the importance of like tapping into and I don't know, we can talk about the Olympics in Tokyo and sort of like how, you know, regardless of like how you feel about the actual like endeavor of it, the way it can benefit skate holistically, especially through the lens of like what it means to be in the Olympics through night, like, because again, Nike's all about innovation.
Sure.
Nike's also very focused on like what are these moments in sport going to be. The Olympics are always this moment in sport, and so they always tether innovation to these kind of iconic sport moments, of which the Olympics is one of the most important ones. So what that means is it opens access to the innovation pipeline exponentially when you become an Olympic presenter. I think that's something people don't even think about externally.
No.
They're just like, what is it going to, like, they're going to misrepresent it. You know what I mean? They're going to like take this thing that's about individual expression and like totally homogenize it. And I mean, I can get into like approach and like how like we did what we did for Tokyo, like through that lens. But like what I would say generally is like the opportunity to innovation, that being an Olympic pursuit opens up within Nike. I think like, you know, it allows us, even though maybe product is created that doesn't see the light of day, there's components of that product innovation that eventually do get applied to product longer term.
What do you mean though?
So
like what kind of product are we talking about? Like what is this?
Well, so specifically for Tokyo, the lead footwear innovation was a shoe called the Bruin NXT. And so it was a Bruin, but they basically made a skatable Flyknit version of the Bruin. So was that commercially viable? No, because the costs associated with it were, you know, it's out of reach for most people. But it allowed the team to really dig, because up to that point, I think there had been so much conversation about like, what if we could make skatable Flyknit? What if we could make skatable Flyknit? They never had the opportunity to try to make skatable Flyknit because the opportunity. But now with this, they're like, okay, we can really dig in and do the work to try to see what is the viability of skatable Flyknit, and that's what I'm saying. And so, does that ever become applied from a consumer availability standpoint? No, not always. But it allowed them to really explore like what is the viability of this thing, and then so the same thing comes with, you know, soles and midsoles and cushioning and those types of things. So, I think for the product teams, like you know,
it helps to.
Yeah, I mean, if you care about that, you know, like not everybody cares about that, but at a place like Nike, like that's what you're there.
Right. Is this what we're talking about right here?
That space
to see if it's going to work.
That's a Flyknit. Is that what it's called? I'm not a shoe guy.
It's not Flyknit. It's not called Flyknit. But I'm saying it's comparable to skatable Flyknit.
Yeah.
So it's a little more durable, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's more durable than it, but you know, at the end of the day, it's not suede.
Right.
You know?
Suede is the best.
Yeah. I mean, hands down for skateboard. I mean, I don't know for everybody, but majority skateboarders.
Definitely majority.
Suede, like, you know.
Right. That's interesting.
again, that's just stuff that internally is like kind of cool to see play out like through the lens of like these, because you know, backing up to just like the whole experience around Tokyo and like what, obviously going into it, there was a lot of you know, a lot of strong sentiment one way or the other on like what it was going to mean.
It was like 50-50.
And I think for like, you know, once you accept that it's going to happen, you're just like, okay, how can we leverage it in a way that's positive, that's beneficial for like for everybody. And so I took the approach of, hey, skate contests have always been a thing in skateboarding, and really it's one of very few moments for the community to come together. I mean, for us, I think like that was always the intrigue of going to contests. It was one of the only opportunities you got to go hang out with your friends,
totally,
and see a new place. Go, you know what I mean? Like just the memories of the contest were always created on the perimeter of the contest, and then you had a contest and whoever won. But like going to Vancouver, that was always so fun. It's such a mission. Bro. Go to a new city, like go out, whatever, just interact in a way that like, yeah, it's just kind of a world discovery thing, right? And so that's how I was like, this is just another contest, and it's in a really cool city, and we should just create the same dynamic where like, let's just, even if you're not in the contest, let's just make it where we're inviting the global skate community to come to the city and have like, you know, the same type of moment. And so, you know, clearly COVID changed the dynamic of how that ended up being executed. But at the end of the day, like, I think you even still saw the difference between like the community component of skateboarding versus like how other Olympic endeavors are very kind of like in their own space.
Totally.
And
I think a lot of press got when
yes, they definitely,
especially that for sure within the women's section.
Within the women's, that's what I'm saying. They were hoisting her up, and everybody. I mean, there was such camaraderie there, and people were tripping.
And so, although it didn't play out exactly how we had intended on the ground, because we were going to do this thing where like we were going to recreate Sandy's. Like he has this great space in Portland, where it's like, you know, it's kind of this perfect mix of like art and skateboarding and music and creativity, like, you know, essentially like the core components of skateboarding. We were going to kind of recreate that space in Tokyo and basically invite the global community, because another thing I was pretty dead set on was like, we should leverage this opportunity to show the spectrum of skateboarding, not just these people that are competing in this moment. It's like, hey, there's all these people that drive skateboarding day in and day out who like, not that they couldn't win a contest, but it's not their interest.
Totally.
And they're just as important, if not more important, in skateboarding. So it was really like shining a light on like those people through this opportunity. And that's really the dynamic we set up, was like, we're going to represent the spectrum of skateboarding in this moment. And so it was like, we're going to have Grant there and Ashad there and you know, go down the list of people, Alyssa, Leo, et cetera, and be like, hey, these are the people that like really, you know, they do just as much to like really like elevate this space as these people that are potentially going to win a gold medal. Excellent. And not to say there's no crossover between the two, but it was like very important to like try to represent that spectrum. And it didn't play out, and you know, for the obvious reason, but you know, like we said, like I think you got a sense of that like when you see the girls hoisting up the other girls you know, after their runs.
But I think that's the most important part that I think I wanted out of the Olympics. It was just to be able to like tell people like, hey, there's this handful of people here that are competing in the Olympics, but there's a whole industry of people that are like the core skateboarders that they matter, like you said, if not more than what's going on in the Olympics.
100%, that was my thing, is like, let's represent the totality of skateboarding in this moment so people understand why we're even here.
There's a learning lesson for the population, which I think, you know.
And there's people that will be legacies in skateboarding forever that never even entered a contest or could have cared less about winning. Not that they didn't win or they couldn't win, but like that was not their drive.
For sure.
And so it was
a lot of those.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so that at the end of the day, it was just like, this is just a giant opportunity to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you can't get out of your own way to understand, like just leverage an I mean, it's like what I was saying, just like from my own work experience, just like recognize opportunity and learn how to like leverage it in a way that like benefits you, but you can tell like, you know, the story.
Yeah.
So use it as an opportunity to tell the full scope of the story so people do get it. Because you're sitting here worried about like people not getting it. And sure, I guess we don't want everybody to get it because maybe we're scared that if everybody gets it, then it loses its luster. Then it loses its luster too. But I don't believe that. I believe it encourages more people to come into it and have those same experiences. And I think like that's, you know, also why, you know, I think what's happening in like, you know, the LGBTQ, queer, trans skate space to me is like really refreshing.
Sure.
Because I think it feels like to them, to those communities, it sort of feels like that experience that we, you know, just like that super core small spot, like only we get it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like I think it's super rad that that they're kind of carrying the torch for like that moment, like because it obviously is a lot more like whatever. It's just it's bigger, but I do feel like what's happening in those spaces is to me is a throwback to like what made it super special for, sure. for you know, for the time that we came up.
100%, 100%.
See that point for sure.
Yeah, I love the fact that you want to like tell that story and everything because I think it's important, you know, and I think that's one thing. And listen, you live and you learn. Maybe, you know, next Olympics will be different, but I think they just really missed the mark on telling the story in the history of skating. You know,
and I think that just came down to like, I think that just came down to like the way it played out. It just wasn't, the platform wasn't as big as it would have been if you had been able to be on the ground
for sure
and do it that way. And so like, I hope can run it back in Paris.
Yeah,
and
I hope so too. Because I think we have so many talented people in skateboarding. It's like get them as announcers, get them in here, get them in on the ground. Like you know, there's so much opportunity there that was just kind of lost.
I also hope those moments will shine that much brighter because they're talking to somebody that actually knows what they're talking about when they're talking to them.
For sure.
I also hope that like this sort of individual expression fact, because that was another thing where it was like, okay, we in terms of things that we can actually help shape like through this, it was the, you know, dispelling the homogenization component of it, where I think like people were afraid it was just going to be like this Sims team photo from 1970 where everybody was going to be wearing the same top and the same bottom and like that. And from the outset we were like, nope, we need to create an assortment, and everybody can like put it together in a way that like best suits their self-expression. There will be a common thread, which ended up being like the para component of it. Like that'll be the thread that ties it all together. But there's this spectrum of what's available instead of like one top and one bottom.
Right.
And you know, I know at least internally that like really resonated, and I think like externally it resonated too. But I think like that was the other component that you know, I think was very satisfying to everybody that like kind of worked on it. Well, I think the fact was like we were very adamant that like we have to maintain the individual expression of skateboarding through this moment, and because that's what people feared the most. They were going to homogenize the individual expression of it through this endeavor.
Exactly.
We had,
so it wasn't going to be like this.
Exactly. 100%. I had that. I can't tell you how many decks I had that photo in. This is exactly what we do not want to do.
That was the one.
Look at that board. Oh my God. It's fucking 20 feet long.
We had Mariah Duran on the show, and she was saying like when she went to the Olympics wearing the outfit, like everyone was tripping like, oh, the skateboarders have the best.
Like, the best outfits.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
But you know, everybody thinks this crazy shit. Like even I was like, oh my God, everybody's gonna the Sims again. Like I didn't use Sims reference.
Some options.
You know, but it's cool.
But you know, I for the most part, the people that were in the positions to influence it understood like what the opportunity was. And I think like, but everybody can debate format and that type of stuff. And that's not what like, that wasn't that at least from where I sat, like that wasn't our thing.
Sure.
It was about like the representation of it, and then like what was going to happen on the perimeter, which obviously we didn't get to execute that quite like we had planned. But yeah, I mean, I think like if we continue to look at it through that lens, like we just could continue to like play it in our favor.
It's good stuff, man. And you guys just came out with the new Nyjah shoe, just dropped. Third shoe. Yeah, it's pretty cool. How does something like the Skater of the Year factor into like anything at Nike? Did you guys even like? I'm sure there's thought in it, but like
it's a So I think at the beginning of the year, you look at from a brand standpoint, you look at what's called, I mean, I don't know, it's moments.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
I think
for
like
sure.
they call them sport moments. I know people like, I'm probably using the word sport way too, like, I'm sure the comments are going to be pretty lit up with like my reference to sport. But you just look at moments where it's like, okay, where could you align certain, so it's like, okay, it's Copenhagen, it's, you know,
Dime,
it's
all that
IWD,
stuff.
it's
Yeah,
BHM, it's like Dime. You look at it through the spectrum of skate, but you also look at it through the spectrum of like culture. In Skate of the Year is one of those moments. I don't think we build plans with that as the end in mind.
Okay.
You know, how individual skaters approach it is like, that's up to, you know,
it's 100%
if they want to
different.
do it, like
Right.
that's fine, but like we don't build plans with like that as the end in mind.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, I
That
mean,
would
I
be
don't
too
know.
hard to do that anyways.
Yeah, I don't.
Especially if you do it all, then you don't get Skater of the Year. Then it's like,
Especially
Well,
how it
yeah.
just happened. You know what I mean?
Also, too, for something so subjective, like it's just like, how you,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just let Nyjah go do his thing, or whoever's kind of gunning for it, or
Yeah.
whatever. You
Yeah.
know?
well, at the end of the day, you got a video part coming out with this shoe. It all lined.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that just was. I mean, that shoe was actually supposed to come out long before it came out.
Oh.
And that was just a happy coincidence that it lined up the way that it did, and we were able to enable the opportunity for him to create like a video part that like kind of synced up with that moment. But like that shoe was supposed to come out like long before it did. So like we would have put it out at that, you know, we would have put it, and it gave him more time to work on the video, which obviously, you know, also
Dude,
helped
imagine-
take it to another level. But like, there's a scenario where like if the shoe doesn't get moved, like the video part just comes out like 6 months before that, and it's not positioned in a way that makes people think that that's the whole intent of it.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just thinking, because he was hurt like most of the year. Imagine
Yeah, I know.
if he wasn't
I know.
hurt, dude.
know.
What?
Yeah.
I like totally just didn't even think about that until right now.
Yeah.
Because that part was
It
absolutely.
was insane.
What was it like being on the
phenomenal.
internal side of that? Like, did you see?
You know, it's funny when you like see something for so long before it comes out.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, when people see this, they're gonna,
Oh, you're getting
that-
snippets
that
of
moment
it.
here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I mean, there's definitely something cool about that. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like that's the last one of those we're gonna see either.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the guy was doing, we're just watching a couple clips
Yeah.
here, but it's insane the way that he's 28 years old and he's still just
yeah,
on top of his game. Just
Yeah. Bro.
I mean, honestly, this shit is gonna motivate him even more to do even more than this.
Yeah.
So,
No
like,
doubt.
what is that gonna look like?
No doubt.
You know?
Yeah.
how funny is that? Winning motivates him, but also losing motivates him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that that's, and I think he should just do it for the
himself.
sake of wanting to keep doing it. But
Yeah.
like, if
Oh.
that's what it takes to motivate him, then great.
Yeah, but listen, if there's no Skater of the Year, if there's no, street leagues or any of this stuff, he'd still be doing the same thing
No
he's doing
doubt.
right now.
I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
for sure.
He's not just going after, trophies, which
Yeah.
it's a nice.
I mean, I love that. Like, he understands that. I mean, he's said it plenty of times, but like, a lot of people up to a point just viewed him through like the contest lens, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
he was the guy that went on the contest, but like he knows that like his legacy is, and he's proud of his contest wins, but he knows his legacy is like these things,
Street
and
Yeah.
he'll
parts,
say that
yeah.
he's like, we actually have a piece that's coming out. It'll be out by the time this airs, but he
Okay.
kind of talks about the process, and he pretty definitively says in it that like he does these things because he knows this is ultimately his legacy.
Wow.
Which I think like the
Yeah.
recognition of that, like, on its own is just like dispels any myth that people may have about it. Like, he
Yeah.
knows he likes winning the contest, but he knows like at the end of the day, like, and it's funny because like again, like internally, you have to use a lot of like metaphors or just like comparisons, and I always try to tell, when I'm trying to explain the value of content, I'm like, hey, he's like an artist. These are like albums. The albums are the catalog, and the catalog is ultimately like what, not that we monetize it, but that's what you monetize, and that's what you're remembered for, and that's ultimately your legacy in this thing. And like, for he clearly understands that like more than like all these contest things, like what is really going to stand the test of time is like these things.
Yeah.
Right. I think nobody's going to really know like, oh, how many street league wins did he have?
Right.
He had a lot,
Right.
you know, but like they'll
Right.
refer back to these video parts.
I mean, are they going to remember, you know, and I'm sure they will, that like he didn't do what he had hoped he was going to do in Tokyo, but they'll probably remember that. That just as much, if not more, you know.
For sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, the Nike, the 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like these signature, these moments, kind of back to like what I was saying, like product created within SB. That like you know, you always create a product to stand the test of time and become a classic, and so to be a part of the like something like this, and even a Shad like first shoe, like that was really cool to be able to, you know, that was one of the projects that I was fortunate enough to drive, and just like to see all that come out and to see it do well, you know what I mean, like his shoe, and I think in a way that was unexpected. Like he really leaned into the innovation opportunity with his shoe, which
you could tell.
I think really, you know, in hindsight, both like it's good. That's what you're at Nike to do, is lean into the innovation opportunity. And he really did it, and he did it in a way that I think, you know, clearly it's resonating.
It is working, bro, because it could have backfired, bro. You already know with that.
How do
Let me ask you a question. I just want to, because this is interesting to me, because like here, pro shoes used to be the thing. You get a pro shoe, everybody's got a pro shoe. I mean, it was for the longest time, and now it's turned to colorways. Now it's few and far between if you get a pro shoe.
Yeah.
Do you think when do you think that took the turn, or why?
I don't know. Like,
listen, a lot of people ain't getting pro shoes nowadays.
Yeah,
it's all about.
I mean, every place is different how they approach it.
Sure.
You know, there's a lot that when you're part of a bigger product engine, there's just going to be, you know, there's just certain. The amount of new product creation you have is finite. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's elastic. And so sometimes it's going to move in the direction where you have space to create a little bit more new product. Other times it's not going to, you know, you're going to have a pretty, you know, tight scope of like what you can create. And so I think we, you know, and again, I'm not like on the product team.
Okay.
So I don't know like what those machinations really look like on the back end. I do know that they're very aware of the importance of maintaining like signature product in our space and what it means in the space. So I know they always like look to, so it's one thing to have a signature product and design something that's still, you know, that's especially at a place like Nike, that's a big deal.
I feel like it's more coveted now than it was before.
And so like, you know, how do you balance that out with a long list of people that also probably deserve that opportunity? But again, it's just like it's just not the pie. It's just not a big enough pie. And so I think you try to balance that with like the pro model opportunity, which allows you to tinker with, you know, stuff that's there in a way like you can, you know,
you could pick a shoe and have the skater.
Yeah, you can do a little bit to it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think we try to lean into like the opportunity with like some of the special projects on Dunk to satisfy some of those needs too.
And then
you have stuff like Orange Label, which is like kind of skate shop only, where we have tried to drive like sort of rider stories like through some of those. So we're very aware, and again, I can't speak for like what you know the other brands do or how they approach it, but like we are very aware of like how many people on our roster are worthy of like those accolades, and we try to accommodate, you know, as best we can given what we have, and I, you know, we get pretty creative when we need to, and it's hard, you know, you can't always do it all for everybody, but I think we do everything that's like within our scope to get it right. So yeah, what does that mean? You know, more broadly, you wish everybody could get a signature. Everybody can't get a signature shoe.
Right. Yeah, it seemed like back in the everybody was getting a signature shoe. It
totally.
was like there was a minute there where like,
and I think there's something about like getting it in the environment we're in that makes it feel special. Because at a point, like there was nothing special about it.
Yeah,
it's like you had a board and you had a shoe, and like I don't know, like is that is it significant? Is it like really contributing anything,
For
or
sure.
did you just go buy like 4 shoes that you kind of thought were dope, and then they got like smashed into
Little
one thing?
mashup.
Like, so like I mean, I think like, yeah, it's cool to have it in a space where like, man, if you get it, especially, I mean, yeah, at a place like that.
Yeah,
it's
How many pro
really,
shoes
like,
do we have at the moment for Nike?
yeah, it's I mean, right now it's Ashad and Nyjah.
And
And,
Paul obviously.
Paul,
And Shane.
not right now. Shane,
and Shane, yeah.
Shane, yes.
Hmm.
And then
Did Leticia have one?
Leticia never had one.
She had a colorway.
It was a colorway that she had.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So there was like, yeah, the colorways that were like, it was a shoe called the Verona.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there was one for Leticia, one for Haisa, one for Sky, one for Alyssa, and one for Leo.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
How about Leticia getting her own shoe?
I mean, yeah, again, like, yeah,
She deserves. I
yeah,
think she's one of those people who like really.
and you know, really, like, that's a group there's, you know, a lot goes into like that process.
Oh, I'm
and
not saying
it's yeah.
You just can't walk in there and tell people.
yeah, but yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think we agree that there's a long list of people
Oh,
that
yeah.
like,
Totally.
yeah, that
Totally.
you know, if there was you know, if there was no limit on it,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well,
And
the
be
ones that
cool.
have the ones that are already like
Yeah.
arrived and have one, I mean, they're all well deserved.
Oh,
That's for
100%.
damn
Or
sure.
even like just having a colorway on a dunk, like that's huge.
big
Like
time.
that's one of the most iconic shoes that like ever. Almost.
and I think like the way that those stories kind of transcend skateboarding is kind of cool too, because you can whatever kind of just connect, just connect with people in spaces that like you would never think you would would never try to resonate in some of those spaces otherwise. So
For
yeah, I think it's
sure.
cool.
Can I suggest something else?
Yeah, keep
Nine
going.
Club Dunk.
Yeah, okay. Let's get it
Can you
going.
just walk in
What's
there
the
and
story?
say,
Yeah.
"What do you mean? What's the
Gotta-
story? We're
yeah,
talking.
yeah.
We're telling stories all the time.
Yeah, exactly. The
There's a
story.
constant story.
Story's a story.
Yeah.
You know? Nah, it's fun. So everything. I mean, how long you been at Nike now?
Almost 8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a
Crazy.
lot of people from the industry that moved up there. Like Milligan's up there.
Yeah, it's a funny moment in time where like I feel like a lot of us ended because I felt like I got there and had like a built-in community like right away.
That's amazing.
Because a lot within that like year, 18 months of me going up there, so many people went up there at the same time. Milligan was there
Yeah.
because Milligan was actually the rep for Girl
Yep.
in Pacific Northwest. He later like migrated into the role he's in now, but like he was there. Scott was up there within like, I mean, I think we moved up there within like 3 months of each other.
Damn.
Wow.
My friend Jason Searcy
Yeah.
that
Oh,
worked
Searcy,
at Girl
yeah.
for a while. He was doing 4-star. He moved up there within probably a year or 2 years.
Okay.
And then like Joey Pepper's there. I don't know. There's a long list of people. Nikel Thayer was already up there.
Oh shit.
I mean, it's a great, like, it's always been a great skate city.
Totally.
And so like there's, you know, it's just,
Is
Yeah.
Joe Brook up there too?
yeah, Joe Brooks there.
Damn.
I mean, dude, I swear it's like there's as many people there as like there are in LA or SF.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's a big, it's a Mickey's up there now
Yeah.
doing his
Does he
thing.
have a bar up there or something?
He's got multiple bars.
Rad.
Amazing.
Holy
Yeah,
So rad.
yeah. So he, you know, he's up there. Yeah, it's cool.
That's so rad.
Do you skate ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get out there and
Every now
skate.
and again,
what do you do?
I
You
have
gotta-
moments. I have moments.
you
sometimes.
gotta-
See them on the
you gotta-
ground.
is there a park up there you go to,
I mean,
or is there?
there's a Nike park that like
Oh,
yeah
sick.
you know have access to. But
Okay.
honestly, my latest run was after I had my second kid. We would go. There's like this school by my house, and there's just like whatever this slab of asphalt, and so you know in the summer we'd go there, and there was like the just worst quarter pipe of all time, like just backed up to this wall, and I just kind of started like messing around on it. Cause it just felt like a total throwback to like, me in high school. So yeah, I was just like, had this kind of 3-month run on this quarter pipe. And I was just like, okay, what if I try this? And like, so I just ended up doing stuff that like, I probably hadn't done for like 20
Rad.
years. It was like, yeah. So
I've
that was my
seen it,
latest.
bro.
Yeah, that was my latest.
That was your latest
foray into skating.
You're setting up the phone and shit?
Yeah.
Yes.
A
Love it,
completely dilapidated and waterlogged 3-foot quarter pipe. That's my shit.
I know Scott is probably still skating.
You know what's funny is like, one, I don't see him that often.
Okay.
Because, you know, he's obviously busy. I think, you know, he's probably travels a fair amount now. And he's, you know, he's got 2 grown-ish kids. So I don't see him that much.
Okay.
And when I do, it's definitely not in a skate, like at the
He's not showing up at the quarter pipe.
I mean, I'm sure like whenever he wants to, it's like not a problem. But yeah, I
love that guy, man.
Yeah,
Such a good dude.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think he's still on a pretty good trajectory over there.
No
I mean,
doubt.
another one that like when we talk about just
No
like
doubt.
opportunity and like the type of opportunity that the experiences that we had can foster.
Yep.
Man, that is a hell of a story. A guy that like had 0 footwear design experience, got an opportunity at Lakai, basically, you know, similar deal, was kind of at the end of his rope, interested in design, reached out to the guy Aaron Hoover, who was the footwear designer at the time, was like, hey, can you help him, show him the tools? And Aaron was like totally game for it. And obviously Scott took to it. He applied himself. He obviously has a good design eye aesthetically. So like, yeah, I mean, self-taught.
Love it.
And look where he is now. I mean,
Love
he's
it.
like
Killing it, bro.
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's and to have that, you know, there's just nobody that has that type of trajectory, and probably in that space, you know. So it's
Right.
like super cool just to, yeah.
Hey, skateboarders, man.
Yeah.
You already
You know what
know.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Skateboarders.
Rule in the world.
I'm telling you, like, you don't underestimate like the ability you have to get in these places and do these things. You just have to like, yeah, just be confident. Just be confident in yourself, and like it's a little bit of like putting yourself out there and even learning the language a bit. But
For
like,
sure.
but yeah, you learn so much in this world. That's why people always tap into this world, because they understand like everything that comes from it. You know, it's just we could
We could do
a little
anything.
bit more to like
Yeah.
bring ourselves up in those
Totally.
Opportunities.
Do you see a lot of like famous like athletes walking around the?
I have seen some, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have. Pretty early on, there was like a cafeteria. We had our own building, and there was like a cafeteria next to it. It was like kind of the new cafeteria on campus, so like people would like come over there, and like pretty early on, I was like walking up to the register, and I looked up, and the LBJ was like right in front of me. I was like, whoa.
No way.
And you know, you're not really supposed to interact with them.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you just gotta, you know,
You can't fan out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Let me get your
you know, you're
autograph.
just there, like, yeah, they're there to not, you know, they
They want to feel comfortable.
want to be in those
bothered.
spaces
Yeah.
to feel like, hey, we're all, you know, we're
Yeah.
in these spaces together, and so yeah, you can't, you just have to, you know.
Give them
Bite
that
your tongue a
respect.
little bit. Yeah,
Alright,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Hey, what's up?
Yeah,
What are you doing?
I actually saw MJ once.
Wow.
In another food court scenario. That one was, you can, I mean, obviously you don't go up to him, but it's just
Mark
like,
Johnson?
You can't take your tray. You can't take your tray over and
like,
sit at the same
there he
table
is,
as him.
like,
Is anyone sitting here?
Yeah. Just like,
Hey, MJ, anybody sitting here?
it's
Can I
just
sit-
crazy when you get like you just can feel the energy, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, it's wild. It's
There
to be,
is
to be in
something-
like in the midst of in the rooms with these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
There is something in the air, huh?
yeah.
You walk into the
an energy.
cafeteria.
And a lot of that is how the people are, you know, you can the energy of the people that are around, so
Yeah.
it
Right.
just kind of emanates out. But yeah, it's
It's fascinating, man.
It's cool.
That is truly
Yeah.
fascinating.
yeah.
Huh.
Those are, you know, and I'm pretty big basketball, so like that was also like when I was going there, it's like, what if somehow I parlayed this skate experience into like an experience in
In basketball.
how
Yeah.
crazy of a story is that? Like the most unlikely like path to get into something
Right.
that like you're also like pretty
Passionate
about, but
for
like
sure.
not remotely connected to like at a grassroots level. I was like, man, that would be like the coolest story ever
Yeah.
for like.
Is there a possibility of something like that? Like if you were there,
Sure,
like,
I mean it's
yeah.
all everything there is a possibility. Like
Yeah.
you know you chart your own course at a place like that, so like it's certainly Because like I said, if you apply yourself and you raise your hand and you do the things to like, I mean, yeah, it's all possible.
Wow.
I think it's more possible in your position versus like an actual, like, let's say a basketball coach wanted to come over to I see skateboarding and try to do something skating.
Yeah,
like,
they actually, reverse, right?
They actually really encourage that type of like, just that type of kind of career pathing, because they want people to have experiences outside of their comfort zone to like, you know, ultimately that positions you to be a better leader overall, because you can see things across like a spectrum outside of just what your comfort zone is. So like they really do encourage you to like get, you know, have experiences in other places outside of your own function, outside of the thing that like you're most connected to for skate. And like, yeah, I mean, I hope to, I think it would be a huge missed opportunity if I don't like do something outside of that world. It's just to maybe ultimately it like who knows how it goes, but like it would be, I think I'd be doing a disservice to myself if I didn't at least
try.
Have one experience outside of skateboarding.
For sure.
Yeah. That'd be rad.
But well, dude, congratulations, dude. I mean, we're talking about a 5-year skate career to
25 years.
25 years behind the scenes. DC, Lakai, now Nike SB. It's amazing,
I mean, to be at 3 companies in eras where they were iconic at those times is, I mean, in hindsight, it's a pretty. I feel pretty lucky.
Well, you did a good job. I mean, you weren't lucky. You like did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think at least part of that is like, from my own doing. But
you were there, a part of it.
Doing a part of that, bro. Your hard work paid off,
bro.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's cool.
Congrats.
I mean, like I said, when that call came in for like, all right, time to start thinking about something else, I was like, all right, what, this is it. What am I gonna do? And to have like
something else
gone this distance, it was totally unimaginable.
So sick.
So
man, congrats, dude.
I told you Kelly Bird would be very important coming on.
For sure. Yep. Well, here's to another 8 years and another 8 years after that, and on to your basketball career. Good job, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, this has been great, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
And
to
have finally been able to do it. Yeah.
Well, I know we've been talking about. You came on. Wait.
I came on
Halloween.
No. So you guys did like at the Lakai was what the full.
Oh,
flare?
the fully. No,
you guys had,
What was that?
That was the full flare. You
The
guys
full
it was
flare.
at the
full flare. Yeah.
Yeah. The Egyptian.
Yep.
You guys had like the little pop up out there. I popped onto that for a minute. Yeah.
Popped on the pop up. Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. And that was like early days, so I didn't really like have a full like lay of the land yet.
Neither did we.
Yeah. So,
that was
we both
didn't know what to expect.
We both kind of come a long way.
Yeah.
But yeah, stoked. I mean, you guys definitely.
Oh man.
Definitely found your rhythm.
Yeah. Well, we have fun. We love talking to people like you, skaters. My most fascinating episodes are the team managers, the filmers, the photographers,
behind the
scenes stuff is.
I think that's the other place where like maybe I'm a little bit of an anomaly, because I think that's automatically where you think you go is like, well, the roles are team manager, videographer, or photographer,
right,
or sales rep.
Sure,
you know what I mean. So like this place where I am is like it's not an obvious choice, I think, for people.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
but those choices, those positions exist.
100% they exist. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like if you just have to kind of understand how to mold what you have,
right,
skill set wise, because you have the skill set by virtue of all these experiences, into just being able to have the conversation with somebody to present the skill set in a way that like whatever
makes sense.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So yeah.
Okay. Before we go though,
so Roberts, we're gonna get you into. we're gonna get you
lined up.
Where are we going?
The next brand specialist role. We're gonna get you.
There you go.
Wait a minute. You're the global brand manager.
Yep.
What's under? Okay. Well, we'll talk about it after the show. We'll talk about it. Kelly, if you don't mind, could we give you some 9 Club stuff to take back with you? Hopefully, you got room in your bag, like a mug or some stuff, 9 Club Yeti stuff, dude.
It's been great, bro.
Well, thanks again. Hopefully,
this has been great, man. This has been great. We're gonna. But you're out here right now for Nike.
I am, yeah. So it's 20 years of
20 years
of Nike SB. So there's there's an exhibition this weekend to kind of celebrate all the great stories that have happened within the 20 years. So if you know Jürgen, who does the Skate Museum, he's kind of curated these 20 stories across the 20 years, and he builds out these sort of like displays for each story.
Sick.
It toured Europe this year.
Okay.
There were 4 stops in Europe, so yeah, this is the only stop in North America, and then that coincides with the launch of the Sandy, the
Sandy
eBay
Bodegger.
dunk.
Right. Okay. Rad.
Yeah, to kind of celebrate, like, it's kind of the last story of the 20-year arc, to like again shine a light on the true patriarch of SB, who cracked the code.
He did crack the code.
Cracked the code.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean,
and also being at a place like this for so long, you truly understand why it took for somebody like Sandy to come in and understand. Like, he really took the time to come in and understand all the nuances of skateboarding. Again, instead of just being like, we're Nike, we do it this way, and we're just going to do it this way. Right. He really took the time to get in there, go talk to the people, talk to the company owners, talk to the shops, and then understand, like, what can Nike bring to skateboarding on skateboarding's terms to, like, really do it the right way. And you understand, like, yeah, just how special that is at a place like this. You know what I mean? Like, how it can really only just, how it can take one person to, like, come in and, like, really shift the dynamic. Because he had done tons of things in other parts of Nike up to that point, where I think he kind of had, like, it was like, all right, he's done it in this space. He did it in global football. You know, he was big in, like, getting Nike established in global football. So it was just like, all right, now skate. And he did clearly cracked the code. So, like, yeah, man, yeah.
We need those code crackers.
Yeah.
You know? First of all, Kelly.
Thank you, sir.
Dude, thank you.
Thank
it's
you,
been a
Dubs.
pleasure. It's been a pleasure. An honor.
Yeah, Kelly.
Thank you.
I know it gets cold up in Portland, so here's a nice 9 Club.
All right.
What the fuck was that?
What was that? I don't know.
It's a 9 Club hoodie for you.
All right.
Stay hydrated up there in Portland as well.
Yeah.
There's a 9 Club Yeti thermos that we made like that.
Love it.
And we got some stickers here. Now, I want you to go to Nike campus.
Yeah.
Put some of these Michael Jordan's parking space right there. Just slap the sticker right on MJ's parking space. And a mug for you, dude.
Right,
hey,
man.
thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This has been a great time.
Stoked.
Again, we got our Stop and Chat show. You can come back anytime.
Okay.
Come kick it and tell more stories and fucking update us on what's going on.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Dude.
Yeah, Caleb.
Have a good one.